Sakurai is a useless, introverted idiot, living like an NPC in his own life, just like you. Things get even worse when his crush starts deriving pleasure from bullying him, making his life a living hell. However, he has no idea that this is just her twisted way of saying she wants to clap.
Okay, just brace yourself, because I'm gonna do it real hard!
It all starts when he meets Huzaki, a freshman in college who is excited to be his junior again. She asks him if he is swimming here in college, just like he did in his old school, and he replies that there is no swim club here. But he adds that there are several other things to do, raising her expectations. However, she becomes disappointed over the next few months when she realizes that Bro is a depressed, shameless loner who has nothing going on for him except to sleep. She gets pissed and decides to do something about it in the following session. In the new year, she meets him again and offers to hang out with him since his life is as boring as yours. The next day, during the school break, she busts into him and offers to watch him eat lunch, but he turns down her offer by telling her he is going for a stroll. However, she keeps following him until he accepts to have her come along. She asks him where they are headed, but gets mean and doesn't answer, causing her to yell her complaints before everyone, which instantly turns him into a scumbag who can't take care of his girl in the eyes of everyone. He reluctantly accepts her wish and takes her to the movies, surprising her that the lonely idiot was initially coming to see a movie alone. She starts to mock him, but he gives her some pep talk regarding hobbies and preferences. However, she replies that that is exactly what a loner would say. He then asks her what her idea of fun is, and she replies that she can bet seeing him sneaking into a store to buy dirty DVDs will be a lot of fun, but refusing to have her trash, he pulls her nose till she begs him. After that, Sakurai gets stuck on what movie to watch, surprising Huzaki, who can't believe he didn't have a movie in mind before coming. He tells her it was a last-minute decision, and besides, that's one of the problems loners like himself face whenever they come to the cinema. Just then, he offers her the option to choose any movie she wants to watch. Bills on him, and she excitedly picks one. He pays for both of them with the extra points he had accrued in the past, and when he expects the 3 feet 1 tall idiot would thank him like every normal girl does, she starts to mock him again because only a certified loner can have such points. Sakurai is pissed again and wishes he could just squeeze her neck. On their way home after the movie, they come across an electronics store, and Huzaki asks them to stop by since she wants to get new earbuds. In the store, Bro starts getting enticed by the products on the shelf, but he doesn't want to impulse buy after watching the 10 Laws of Investing by Warren Buffett on YouTube. Huzaki calls him and asks him to test a massage chair with her. As he sits beside her, she increases the tempo of the vibration, but this quickly gives her the experience of her vibrating toy, and she starts to make happy noises that embarrass Sakurai. He quickly asks that they leave before his Magnum enters full reload. However, the naughty girl gets on another massager that sets her jiggle physics in motion, so he closes his innocent eyes immediately in embarrassment. Afterward, they head to the VR section, and Huzaki starts first, but she accidentally hits Sakurai in the face while she plays it. Sakurai decides to try it too, and plays a deep water diving game. He is soon attacked by a shark, which scares him, and he starts to move his hands around in defense until he suddenly grabs Huzaki's bouncy floaties. He squeezes for a moment, thinking it's some jellyfish or something, making Huzaki scream out. He removes the headset and is surprised that VR is this real, even up to the touch. Following this, they play the baseball 3D simulation game, and Huzaki mocks Sakurai for playing so poorly despite his bragging about having experience. She decides to try too, and challenges him that dinner's on him if she hits a home run. When the pitcher pitches the ball, she attempts to hit it off with a full swing but gets hit instead, knocking her to the ground. Sakurai tells her she must be a dumb skull to think she could hit like that as a novice, but she blames him for it, saying she only followed what she saw him do. Sakurai suggests she go home and rest, then see a doctor the next day, but she says she still wants dinner. Later at the fast food joint, he tells her injury shouldn't be serious since she walked here on her own just fine, but he says she should see the doctor the next day if she notices any discomfort. However, Huzaki doesn't give a cent about what he says and just keeps enjoying the meal before her. He then says that this wouldn't have happened if her stubborn head wasn't adamant on following along. Bro suddenly notices the plate and realizes that this glutton has eaten all the chicken they were supposed to share while he was busy ranting like a frustrated parent, making him more pissed. She offers to share the one in her mouth, but he tells her he doesn't want any more, amusing the seller, who immediately considers them lovers. Sakurai orders another plate of chicken, and while that is pending, the seller offers Huzaki a complimentary plate of meat, which she starts eating immediately. However, as Sakurai considers having a taste too, he discovers she has cleared the plate again. His chicken is soon served and Huzaki stares at it like a starving rhino. She then attempts to eat from it, but Sakurai yells in disapproval. The next day, Uzaki meets Sakurai in school and tells him she had fun the previous day. She also claims that she made sure his lonely soul was not bored, but he replies as though he is neutral about it, saying he wants to spend the day alone anyway. Knowing he is just capping, she asks them to go again today so he can teach her how to swing, but he replies that the only swinging he wants to do is while clapping her. He tells her he is busy today, and she tells him another time, to which he agrees, knowing he won't be bored with her after all. Just then, the naughty girl suddenly raises her voice, saying her back still hurts, and she can't walk properly because of the thing they did the previous day, embarrassing him. Some days later, while Sakurai works at a cafe, Yusaki suddenly sees him as she walks past and decides to disturb him. She is surprised at seeing him and asks why he never told her he worked there. Meanwhile, Sakurai's boss, observing them, wonders who she is to him, and judging by his angry expression, he reasons she has to be his enemy. Sakurai tells Uzaki that this place doubles as his workplace and safe haven to relax, so she has to leave, but she replies that she wants to relax too and is starving. He suggests she eats elsewhere, but Uzaki doesn't back down and insists on ordering her food here. She demands to speak to his boss like a Karen, and turning to the old geezer being entertained by their drama. She thanks him for taking care of her senior. The old man realizes that it is a senpai-kohai relationship, and considering how close to the ground Uzaki is, he asks her if she is ripe, annoying her as she replies that she is a college student. The cafe owner is shocked that he missed it, because he thought he had the perfect eye to identify people correctly. He sees her well-rounded melons and reasons that there must really be a creator. Meanwhile, seeing his weird attitude, Sakurai considers the old man a predator ready to risk it all for some well-stuffed pillows. Following that, Uzaki takes her seat and starts acting like a customer, but Sakurai gets uncomfortable and acts terribly, causing her to question how he treats other customers. Meanwhile, the old bored man finds their drama interesting and hopes it doesn't end. Sakurai tells Uzaki that he always gets shy having someone he knows around while he works, prompting her to ask if he treats his friends who have come there before the same way. He cutely tells her she is the only one he treats this way, because she is special, and instantly switches to his villain mode, telling her to get whatever she wants and get lost already. The cafe owner intervenes and instructs Sakurai to show her the way he treats other customers, exciting Uzaki. He gets to action immediately and starts treating her like Cinderella, but this only cracks her up. He gets pissed and throws her out like your toxic ex dumped you. And even though she begs him to let her in again, he refuses till the old man tells him to walk her home before it gets dark. On her way home, Uzaki tells Sakurai she is starving, but Sakurai tells her to just shut up and go home. She tells him to allow her order next time then, and he says she is free to do that since he won't be there next time anyway. Uzaki, however, compliments the cafe, and Sakurai expresses how much he likes the place, prompting her to suggest she also gets a part-time job there, but dude tells her not to even dare. The next day, Sakurai suddenly comes across a kitty on his way to school and tries to pet him, but the kitty wouldn't allow him to put his filthy hands on him. Uzaki meets Sakurai on this and attempts to pet the kitty using the trick she learned on TikTok. She successfully tames the cat, surprising Sakurai. She tells him she has cats at home and asks him if he would love to see them, but this causes him to think for a moment, wondering if it is cool to go to a girl's house alone even though he would really love to play with her kitty. A biker suddenly rides past them, and the cat runs off immediately, making Sakurai feel bad because he really wants to play with that kitty. He complains that he doesn't have one and that his parents don't allow pets at home. Seeing this, she decides to go get the cat and runs off immediately, surprising Sakurai, who immediately follows her. Uzaki sees the cat in a bush and quickly runs there to catch it, but the cat escapes before she can. However, unfortunately, she gets stuck in the bush. Sakurai, coming behind her, sees her exposed underwear and goes to smack her bundle with a book to cover it. Uzaki makes a sus sound in response and asks why he hit her. He tells her undie was showing, embarrassing her, but she chooses to overlook all he just did and tells him to try to pull her out. The cultured idiot grabs her like an expert in backstrokes, but he is embarrassed as he sees how beautifully arched her back is. However, he finds it difficult to pull her out because her clothes are now stuck in the bush. She tells him to be careful or her melons will become a public spectacle. The two start to struggle and enter a rhythm typical of plot development, scaring the passers-by who think they are creeps. Uzaki finally gets out, and Sakurai covers his eyes, feeling embarrassed by the sus things that just happened. Later during lunch, while Sakurai serves his food, Uzaki appears but he can't look at her because of what happened earlier. She tells him she knows he is eating all alone since he has no friends, but he replies that he's eating with his friends. She is surprised and demands to say hi to them, but he tells her to mind her business. A few moments later while they eat, she keeps staring at him and making some funny expressions that leave him confused. He receives a message from her, asking if he is not feeling lonely, but he tells her to shut her mouth and eat. The two banter for a while with Uzaki, showing concerns which Sakurai finds intrusive. At the cafe later, while Sakurai relaxes over a cup of coffee, Uzaki barges in. This annoys him, and he asks her what she wants. She tells him she wants him to help out with an essay, but he refuses and tells her to do it herself because he is still at work, while she begs on. The cafe owner, desiring to enjoy their drama this evening again, tells him to help her as they are almost closed for the day after all. He reluctantly gets to it, and while she writes the essay, she suddenly asks him if she can swing by his place. He immediately refuses without thinking, and then gets curious why she is even asking that, to which she replies that she just wants to check his place out. This response seems ridiculous to him, and he tells her he has no reason to welcome her to his place. Uzaki debates that her coming will save him money since she will do the cooking, and besides, his place is closer to school. He becomes shocked and asks what she means by that last statement, so she replies that she is considering sleeping in. Sakurai immediately flares at her, saying there is no way he is allowing her to sleep over. She wonders why he is angry, and he looks at her watermelons because that's some big temptation right there. He instantly gets red as he thinks about this, and starts yelling like a moron who is scared to touch girls. Meanwhile, the old man starts to glitch from the dopamine spike he is getting from their banter, and he reasons that all this could end if Sakurai stops working, so he considers giving him a raise. Some days later, while Sakurai works at the cafe owner's daughter, Ami, starts to admire him and wishes she could have him for dinner. She notices that some customers are also feeling him, which makes her want him even more. However, her father snaps her out of her delusional nonsense, reminding her that she is still on duty. So she apologizes and tells herself she shouldn't be getting distracted by Sakurai. Just then, Uzaki appears and starts acting all friendly around Sakurai, prompting Ami to ask him who that is. He tells her she's a sophomore in their college, and she is surprised because she thought otherwise since Uzaki is so down to earth. She continues to observe them, and judging by how chill they are, she reasons that they must be really close friends. She tells her dad about it, and he chuckles, scaring her that she might have a rival after all. The old man tells her to serve Uzaki water, and while at it, she becomes intimidated by her cuteness and note jugs, but she calls herself together. She then asks about their relationship, to which she excitedly rambles about how they have known each other from their old school. Meanwhile, Sakurai notices that Uzaki's water jug is getting low and thinks about refilling it for her. Ami finally tells the big-chested one to call her when she wants to make her order and leaves. She returns to her dad, and they start gossiping about the two. Just then, Sakurai approaches Uzaki's table with a jug, but at the same time, Uzaki realizes that her jug is empty and stands up quickly to go get it refilled, only to collide against Sakurai, spilling the water in his hand on both of them. Frustrated, Sakurai tells her she is a freaking customer and is meant to allow waiters to do their job, but she defends that he never treats her as a customer anyway. Seeing the drama between the two, Ami reasons that she needs to start taking more shifts, as this is a low-budget Netflix and chill. The next day, Uzaki arrives at the cafe and discovers that Sakurai is not there because he has been knocked out with a cold due to what happened the previous day. She pays him a visit after this, and as Sakurai opens the door, he collapses on her pillows because that's where comfort truly lies. She takes him inside, and while he lies down, he reasons that he eventually allowed her into his house, but he wonders who gave her his address. Meanwhile, Uzaki becomes sad to see him panting like the Grim Reaper is waiting on him. She initially thought it was something mild, and she was coming to his place to play games since she now knows his place. Thinking quickly, she asks him if he has seen a doctor or eaten, and he says no. So she gets up and heads to the groceries to get some food and drugs from the pharmacy. She soon returns with a plate of a cooked meal, and when she tries to feed him, he gets embarrassed. He takes the spoon from her and feeds himself until he empties the plate. Afterward, seeing that he is hot, she brings a bowl of water and tells him to strip so she can wipe him, but he tells her he's good. Being embarrassed, however, she insists and pulls his clothes from his body, revealing his Giga Chad physique. She starts to wipe his back and tells him his skin is nice, but Sakurai can't say much because he is embarrassed as heck. The naughty girl suddenly presses her melons on his back and begins to move in a sus way that could make you jizz your pants. Following that, she gives him his medicine and tells him to go see the doctor the next day if he doesn't get better. She then offers to stay until he falls asleep before taking her leave, and Sakurai appreciates her for caring for him. However, the idiotic chick wouldn't allow him to sleep as she kept disturbing him with questions on how to defeat a difficult opponent in a game. Frustrated, he tells her he will lend her the game, so she should be on her way, but the crazy girl refuses. The next day, Sakurai is now fine, and on his way out he meets Ami, who asks about his health. He tells her he is now okay and appreciates her for filling in for him when he was away. He then asks if he can also take one of her shifts to thank her better, but she replies that if he wants to appreciate her, then he should invite Uzaki over for dinner, surprising him. In the next scene, Sakurai, Uzaki, Ami, and her father meet together for dinner in celebration of Sakurai's discovery, but he wonders who the heck celebrates a recovery from a minor cold. The two soon begin their drama again, and the other two enjoy their drink while being entertained. Uzaki soon leaves for the toilet, and the old man asks Sakurai if he did the Boombaya when Uzaki visited since Pro got better very quickly. However, he replies that he doesn't have that kind of relationship with her, disappointing them, and they call him a clueless virgin with no sense of culture. He then says that one of the reasons he won't want that is that Huzaki is his junior, and he doesn't want rumors about her frequenting his place. Huzaki soon returns, and as she sits down, she hears Sakurai calling Ami by her first name. She points this out to him, and he replies that he does this to distinguish between her and her father. However, Huzaki is not satisfied with this and her mood changes. She calls him out to see him later, and while Sakurai waits for her, he wonders what she wants to discuss with him since he has noticed her mood change since they went for dinner. She soon appears with a dangling coin and a hypnotic book, surprising him. She starts to cast some spells that don't work, but Sakurai decides to play along since he still owes her for taking care of him. She suddenly asks him to call her by his first name, surprising him that this is why she is doing this. He struggles to call it, but eventually does it, making her very excited. She then tells him to call it repeatedly until she is satisfied. And after that, her gold-digging talent kicks in as she begins to make insane demands that make him break character. He yells at her for trying to take advantage of him, but she suddenly talks about how he calls Ami by her first name and compares it to how he refers to her, leaving him speechless. He gets to his knees immediately and apologizes before explaining that he actually gets uncomfortable calling girls by their first name. He is only doing it with Ami because she forced it down his throat. Hearing this, she tells him she won't force him to do it. Then he takes the coin and swings it before her eyes, instantly hypnotizing her. Sakurai becomes shocked that it worked and starts to panic when he can't bring her back to normal. A few weeks later, the cafe owner informs Sakurai that he will be having some days off since he and his family are going on a trip, so Ami advises him to use the holiday to have some time out too. However, the loner remains indoors, gaming for 3 days straight since he has no social life just like you. He is pissed with his miserable life, but continues gaming anyway, and just then, he suddenly hears his doorbell ring. Upon checking who is there, he is not disappointed to find out it is Huzaki. She tells him she thought to visit because she figured he would be home alone, gaming his life points away. She then brings out a game, asking if he would play, frustrating him because how the heck is that different from what she accused him of doing? Meanwhile, he says he has the app on his phone too and agrees to play anyway since he is bored as heck. They begin playing the game by searching for things around the town. Huzaki observes Sakurai's disgusting face and tells him he looks like a socks thief, so she steps away from him to avoid people thinking they were together. He checks his phone screen to see his progress in the game, but complains that his eyes hurt from too much screen time. Huzaki suggests they go buy him a pair of glasses right away, and upon getting to the store, they suddenly see Ami there. She discovers that they came to get glasses for the useless otaku, who had gained all through the time she and her father were on a trip. Sakurai soon tries out one of the glasses, shocking Huzaki and Ami to see that he actually looks good in them. So they start trying out many other glasses, making him feel like an experiment. They tease him as they try different glasses on him, pissing him off. Huzaki also tries out a pair of glasses and asks Sakurai what he thinks. Determined to repay her, he tells her she looks just like Excalibur with a pair of glasses. She gets angry immediately, and the two start trash-talking each other, leaving the store attendant wondering if they are from the zoo. They get on a train to continue playing their game. Huzaki keeps winning different cats, while Sakurai wins what he looks like apes. The train suddenly hits the brakes, and Sakurai almost busts into Huzaki. More passengers start to come in, and the train gets tighter. A few moments later, a land whale boards the train and crams Sakurai into Huzaki, pushing his chest on her soft floaties. He immediately gets embarrassed and starts Zen meditation to prevent his dragon from rising. However, he gets caught up in the softness of those pillows and loses himself. They soon reach their destination, and Huzaki alights the train, but Sakurai's brain is still fried, so he forgets to alight. He returns to his senses a few miles after in the middle of nowhere, with 100 missed calls from Huzaki. Following this, Sakurai reports all the events that happened during the short holiday to the old man at the cafe, and the old man encourages him to be carefree since he is still young. He says he is sure Ami is also hanging out with the boys, but she replies no, shocking him. Sakurai also narrates the whole thing to Ami, amusing her, but she tells him to reach out to Huzaki since she was the one who invited him along. Later, he sees Huzaki lying down like a wasted drunk, but he decides not to engage because he doesn't want her trouble. However, she calls his name, and he goes to sit beside her, wondering if she was run over by a truck or something. The blockhead reveals that she checked the calendar and realized that there is no break in June, surprising him. He tells her she's still got weekends, but she protests that the longer the breaks, the better. She further says that she is not so cool with the rainy weather, and Sakurai tries to encourage her that after the rainy season comes the summer break. However, the lazy idiot complains that exams come before summer breaks and says she wants to have fun. Hearing this, Sakurai suggests they do that next weekend, shocking her because there is no way a loner like him is suggesting they go somewhere. Seeing her reaction, he tells her never mind, but she tells him she's game for the outing. He then asks her where she would love to go, and she suggests hopping on a train again. But Sakurai becomes embarrassed immediately as he remembers the sus moments that occurred the other day. He tells her no, and they finally agree to meet at his house. The following weekend, it starts to rain, and while Sakurai thinks she won't come, she suddenly arrives all wet with her big tempting bazookas. She tells him she got some groceries so she can cook while she stays for the while. Afterward, she takes a shower and changes into one of Sakurai's big tops. She then prepares to cook while Sakurai assists. Following that, they eat and play games together until evening. On her way home, Huzaki expresses how much fun she had but says she wishes they completed their game's mission. Sakurai replies that they would the next time she comes over. As they later separate, she suddenly asks him if the next time he mentioned could be the next day, and he agrees. She then turns to leave but suddenly realizes that she left her pass at Sakurai's place, so they turn back to go pick it. Some weeks later, Sakurai stands on top of a plank on a very high building, trying to save a cat, but the cat escapes his grip, leaving him to fall off. He suddenly wakes up in class and realizes it was just a dream. While he hopes no one saw how he jolted from sleep, he suddenly experiences an even worse nightmare when he sees Huzaki staring at him, who immediately starts to mock him. She comes beside him and teases him, asking if he was dreaming of falling from a high place. He gets embarrassed and tells her to keep quiet as the class is ongoing, but the teacher soon begins to teach on the meaning of dreams about falling from a high place. This becomes a weapon in Huzaki's hands, and she teases him so much that he wishes to commit a crime. After the class, Huzaki won't stop using him to cruise, but Sakurai tells her that the dream interpretation nonsense is all a fluke, and he doesn't believe in them. Huzaki tries to convince him otherwise, and while they walk down the stairs, she suddenly slips. However, Sakurai quickly carries her like a child. He tells her this is what happens when she refuses to watch her own steps, but focuses on mocking people. He goes on to tell her that there is this saying that people who trip down the stairs can develop climacophobia, the fear of descending stairs. She initially dismisses it, but becomes terrified when he paints it so badly. In the next scene, some girls trouble Sakaki to go out with them, but not willing to roll with gremlins, he uses Sakurai, who appears at that moment as his escape route. As they walk away, the girls wonder if they should follow Sakaki or not, but Sakurai's gloomy face scares them. At the cafeteria, Sakurai tells Sakaki that he has not seen him around in a while, and he replies that he took some time out to enjoy the ocean views, surprising Sakurai. Sakaki asks him if anything happened while he was away, and the memories of Huzaki flash through his mind, but he says nothing. He rather tells Sakaki how he has been living his average miserable life. Hearing this, Sakaki asks him when he would even do something out of the norm, as his life has been dull since the 3 years he has known him. However, Sakurai doesn't see this as a big deal and tries to open his can drink, but Sakaki suddenly grabs his clothes and yells that this is not the time to be drinking, as he finds youths who live their lives casually repulsive. Just then, Huzaki appears and asks Sakurai who Sakaki is. He tells her he is his friend, shocking her, because she had always thought he had no other friend and only bragged about an imaginary friend. She tells him she won't stop hanging out with him anyway, and asks where they should go after school closes. Sakurai replies that he would be with his friend, but she tells him that people would think he is not straight if they see him walking with only one male friend all the time. Sakurai gets pissed and tells her he has more than one male friend, but she doesn't believe him. She leaves for her next class, and Sakaki starts to tease Sakurai that he has found love at last. He promises to be his wingman on this, and Sakurai realizes that he is now in another mess. Following that, while Sakurai and Huzaki play games together, Sakaki suddenly joins their table and asks how long they have known each other. They reply that they have known each other since their old school, and Sakaki goes straight to ask how far they have gone, clapping or Hokuto, embarrassing them. Huzaki comments that though this stupid dude seems chill, he is a cultured moron. Sakurai defends that they have not done anything of such, and even if they have, they wouldn't announce it. Huzaki looks at him like he just capped, as there have been some high-tension moments between them. But Sakurai gets confused, wondering when anything happened. Sakaki then says he didn't mean to intrude but only wanted to know if they were dating yet, since they are always together, and there might be rumors about their relationship. Not in for this BS, Sakurai tells Huzaki they go get some ice cream, and the two leave immediately. At that moment, Amy appears and slams the table before Sakaki, asking what the heck he just did. She tells him that that was too direct, and that doing such may end up nipping their love in the bud. She adds that she is watching over them, and won't let someone else intrude, realizing that she is also rooting for them. Sakaki suggests they team up, but Ami gets even more pissed, telling him she doesn't need his help, she just wants to watch them from the sides. Meanwhile, the other two are having some time together outside. Huzaki offers Sakurai a piece of candy, but he declines it, saying he doesn't like chocolate flavor since it is not any different from toothpaste. This makes Yuzaki mad and she starts ranting on why he would compare Chocomint to toothpaste. She goes on to tell him the history of Chocomint, defending it like Arsenal fans defend their whack team. After her long mindless yapping, everyone starts to clap for her, and Sakurai tells her he never liked mints since he was young and even had to use non-mint toothpastes. She then asks him if he tried the chocolate ones, but he says no. She almost hits his ugly face, but he grabs her hand as she asks him how the heck he is judging what he has never tasted. She eventually gives him a stick to try, and as he attempts to, he realizes that she initially put the stick in her mouth, which makes it an indirect kiss, but he takes the candy anyway to avoid further problems. She realizes what just happened when she puts the last candy in her mouth and becomes embarrassed. At the same time, Sakaki, still meeting with Ami, tells her it would take 1,000 years for them to get together with the method she is suggesting, but the bird brain replies that she would live for 1,000 years then. Some days later, Huzaki gets a job at the cafe, but Sakurai is angry because he knows his workplace is about to become stressful because of having to deal with her. She tells him she got the job because she wants to keep seeing his paper bag face, and also because she needs some money to enjoy the coming summer break. Sakurai realizes that the cafe owner took her in because of some useless reasons, and even though it doesn't sit well with Sakurai, he starts to show her the ropes of the job. After explaining a few things, Yuzaki asks him where his jokes are since he has been acting, but Sakurai gets pissed, not knowing what she is talking about. He later realizes that Amy and her father had done all he was doing. They were only pulling his legs, annoying him. Later, while they carry out the cafe's activities, Yuzaki asks him what his plans are for the summer break. He happily tells her about a game coming out and says he will be holed up at home throughout, but Yuzaki tells him he does that all year long, asking if he will waste his precious summer break on games. She suddenly suggests they go to the beach or pool since he hasn't done any swimming since he graduated from his old school, to which he agrees. Sakaki enters at that moment and seals the agreement. At the beach some weeks later, Ami arrives there to meet Yuzaki and Sakurai, already having fun. She notices the most prominent thing about Yuzaki, her jugs, and immediately feels intimidated. Yuzaki calls her over, and as she sits under the umbrella, she tries to look for Sakaki since they had planned this together to set Yuzaki and Sakurai up. But Yuzaki tells her he is taking care of the lodging arrangements, realizing that it is her responsibility to watch over Yuzaki and Sakurai. She asks where Sakurai is and Yuzaki points in his direction. He soon appears and expresses his thrill of swimming in the ocean for the first time as opposed to the feeling he gets from the pool. However, Ami points out that he doesn't need a pair of goggles and a swimming cap at the fun and says he should drop the swim club thingy and enjoy the fun. Afterward, Ami asks Sakurai why he went swimming without Yuzaki. She adds that if he leaves her alone, that makes her open to other naughty guys hitting on her, so he has to look out for the girl that came with him. She then tells him to compliment her to get things going, but the idiot thinks Ami is talking about herself, and he tells her melons are nicely packaged in her sky blue swimsuit. Ami smacks him immediately, telling him she was talking about Ami. He foolishly heads there like a Casanova, ready to rizz a girl up, but Yuzaki gets embarrassed and pushes him to the ground. Yuzaki comes to meet Ami immediately, who asks her what Sakurai said, but Yuzaki gets embarrassed again and tells her he said nothing. Following that, Sakaki appears with a watermelon and asks them to play a game. He gives Sakurai a baseball bat and blindfolds him. He has a task to hit the watermelon placed in front of him. Yuzaki starts guiding him with gamepad moves, confusing him because why the heck is she giving him fighting game moves? Ami and Sakaki try to direct him using plain terms, but Yuzaki keeps confusing him until he slips and falls on her, grabbing a different kind of watermelon. The doofus thinks it's a jellyfish because of how soft it is and even squeezes further, embarrassing Yuzaki. He asks them where the watermelon it is and Ami tells him he is grabbing it already. He doesn't believe her and sits back to remove his blindfold, but before he can, Yuzaki quickly places the watermelon before him to avoid more embarrassment. He is surprised it was really the watermelon and touches it to have a feel again, but something just doesn't seem right. Sakaki takes them to the lodge he prepared after, and they are shocked at how big and luxurious it is. They roast some meat after, and while at it, Yuzaki talks about a game she brought along which they will play later that night. However, Sakaki suggests that since they are here they do something different. He takes them into the thick forest and Sakurai, getting uneasy, asks him what they came here for. Sakari reveals that there won't be a summer without a test of courage, and hearing this, Sakurai immediately calls a quit out, saying he doesn't play horror games or watch horror flicks because they are scary. Sakaki immediately apologizes for this, but says that even though it's nice to be honest, Announcing his weakness like that only makes him less attractive. However, Huzaki sees this as an opportunity to troll him. She grabs his phone from him and runs off while Sakurai pursues her because he needs his phone's flashlight to see. Meanwhile, Ami asks Sakaki if this was his plan, but he replies that he didn't expect things to turn out this way. Huzaki was supposed to be the scared one who clings to Sakurai. Sakaki and Ami decide to go look for the two on their way. He tells her he followed her wish of not meddling with the two, but watching from the sides. So he thought to create the right conditions instead, which should turn them into something interesting. However, he is surprised by the unexpected turn of events between those two. Emi asks him why he is going to such lengths for Sakurai, and he replies that Sakurai is a great guy, but he is just too slow, so he wishes his college life could be more fun. They soon reach where the two are only to find Sakurai terribly shaking in fear like a weakling. Sakurai, Ami, and Sakaki sleep immediately upon returning to the lodge, while Huzaki plays games instead. She gets pissed that she is the only one playing and decides to capture Sakurai's sleeping face. However, he grabs her in his sleep and buries his head in her babs. She initially struggles to free herself from his grip, but decides to give him some milk, since she was the one who wearied him out anyway. The next morning, while Sakurai brushes his teeth, he tells Uzaki that he had a great night, and she suddenly states that he better invest in some body pillows, making him wonder why, but she refuses to tell him. Meanwhile, Ami and Sakaki, peeking from the door, realize that they missed out on an important event the previous night. Some days later, Uzaki suddenly receives a call from Sakurai, begging her to come be with him because he needs her. Uzaki thinks about these words as she goes to meet him, wondering if he is flirting or something. However, she becomes disappointed when she meets him, and the idiot points to a cat cafe, saying he couldn't just bring himself in alone. They head into the cat cafe, and seeing the many cats there, Sakurai becomes very excited, so he asks the attendant if he can touch the cats. He is told he can if the cats allow, and he bends down to pet one of the cats using the technique Uzaki once taught him. The cat gets on his lap, making him even more excited, surprising Uzaki that someone as gloomy as he is can like cute things. As he plays with the cats, he thanks Uzaki for coming along, because he would have gotten to the entrance and made a U-turn if she wasn't with him. However, she tells him he is only exaggerating, and he replies that he's got to thank her somehow. So she informs him that her birthday is coming up soon. She adds that she will be 20 and would like to make it special. Meanwhile, Sakurai apologizes that he couldn't process any of what she just said, because his legs have been so numb since sitting in one position. She gets pissed and tells him to get rid of the cats, but he refuses, so she carries the cat from his leg against his wish. He gets on his knees, unable to move his legs, and Uzaki goes behind him to tickle his legs, causing him to squeal helplessly until they are both chased out of the cafe for constituting a nuisance. On her way home, Sakurai blames her for causing them to be thrown out and says he will go alone next time, but the unremorseful buffoon reminds him that his useless face has been blacklisted from visiting. As they later separate, Sakurai tells Uzaki he owes her one for joining him today and asks her to think it over. However, Uzaki replies that he has already thought it over, reminding him that her birthday is coming soon, so she has high hopes for it. Sakurai meets Ami and her father about this since he is clueless about what to do. The old man states that Uzaki is a schemer to have just thrown him into the loop of she has high hopes, knowing fully well that the dude in question is a blockhead who has no experience with women. However, Ami says that this comes from the peculiar mentality of a girl in love who wants someone to fret over her, although Uzaki herself might not realize it. The two ask if he has any ideas, and he replies that he has considered different things, but thinks she wouldn't like any of them. Ami and her father are surprised he thinks this way and say they bet she will cherish anything from him. They then tell him to follow his intuition, the very first thing that comes to his mind when he thinks of a birthday present. The D-Day comes, and Bro's slow brain hasn't successfully thought of something, so he decides to go to a store and pick something anyway. However, he suddenly receives a call from Uzaki, who plays the same card he used on her, telling him to come because she needs him. He soon meets her, wondering what she needs him for. She points to a pub, saying she couldn't bring herself to go in alone, and reminds him that it is her 20th birthday, so she has high hopes for his wallet. Sakurai is shocked that this was all she wanted for her birthday, and he screams out in agony for stressing himself over nothing. In the pub, Sakurai sits there wondering who the heck celebrates a birthday in a pub, but she tells him she wants to enjoy drinking with him. This is followed by multiple rounds of eating and drinking for Uzaki, who thinks she is heavyweight, but she gets so drunk that Sakurai has to be her caretaker for the night as they head home. Sakurai realizes they can't get a train anymore since it is already late, so he suggests they use a cab. However, he is dead broke now, thanks to Uzaki's gold-digging talent. He thinks of using the ATM but reconsiders because of the access fee and the pricey late-night fares, so he reluctantly decides to take her to his apartment, which is close since he can't leave her outside like this. Later that night, as Sakurai prepares to sleep, This bozo opens another can of piss as she sits to play a game, and he reasons that she needs to learn the cons of drinking too much booze, so she doesn't say bye to her kidneys. He decides to sleep, and while he tries to, Uzaki won't stop talking to him, so he pretends to be fast asleep. However, Uzaki attempts to kiss him to wake him up, but he instantly jumps up, feeling embarrassed. She tells him she knows he was faking his sleep and says she was only joking, but she starts to tease him about his reaction, asking if he has never been kissed before. This makes Sakurai redder, and he tells her to shut her mouth. The next day, Uzaki almost vomits her intestines due to the amount of alcohol she took the previous day, and she vows never to take alcohol again. As Sakurai leaves for the store, she calls him and tells him it was fun being with him at the pub, but as Sakurai attempts to reply, she suddenly pours on herself again. A few days later, Uzaki meets Sakurai, and she is sober for the nuisance she caused the other day. However, he tells her not to worry about it, but she offers him money, saying it is from her mother, to pay for the damages. Some ugly girls overhear them and think Sakurai is trying to extort her. Trying to clear himself, the idiot explains to Uzaki that it wasn't something huge, since she only stained his futon because it was her first time. However, this only comes as sauce to the girls, so he takes the money from Uzaki and tells her to forget about everything. The girls immediately call him a scum for telling a girl who just lost her V card to forget about everything, making him give up in frustration. The next day at the cafe, Ami and her father ask Sakurai what went down during Uzaki's birthday, to which he replies that Uzaki told him she wanted to drink with him, so she dragged him off to a pub, shocking the two. He adds that they drank a little too much, so they missed the last train and Uzaki had to pull over at his place. Hearing this, Ami and her father become curious about what happened next, expecting to hear that they developed plot, but Sakurai suddenly starts to cry, shocking them, and Ami wonders what Uzaki did to him. Meanwhile, Sakaki is on a ship tour, enjoying the ocean view, but he suddenly reasons that he is about to miss out on something important with Uzaki and Sakurai. He instantly regrets joining the ship and attempts to jump off, but someone quickly holds him. He then tries to call Ami, but he cuts the call. Just then, Sakurai explains that Uzaki has been acting somehow since that incident, and she has refused to come around no matter how much he tells her not to beat herself up about it. The old man tells him she must think she did something unforgivable, so he gives Sakurai a ticket to the fireworks festival and asks him to invite her. However, the slow-brained wonders why he should do that, and Ami tells him so he can make amends with Uzaki. Bro replies that it's not like they have an argument or something, but Ami calls him a clueless moron, and even though direct involvement is not her forte, she tells him that when he meets Uzaki at the festival, he must compliment the living daylights out of her to change her mood. Sakurai and Uzaki meet at the fireworks festival later that evening, and even after engaging in some fun activities, Sakurai does not feel her vibe because she is acting too calmly and more respectfully than usual. He thinks of how she would have trolled him usually and thinks that he has to do something fast to lift her spirits. He suddenly remembers Ami's advice and starts complimenting the heck out of her. Seeing that this makes her happy, he doubles down on it, which makes the surrounding people think he is the biggest simp since Will Smith. His compliments soon become noise to Uzaki's ears, and she tells him to stop. She becomes very displeased with this and mistakenly flings her purse till she hits his head with her paws, causing a fracture to his skull. The scene cuts to when Sakurai used to train Uzaki how to swim. Bro was always looking like someone stole his lunch, which frightened Uzaki a bit. However, as they went home that day after the training, they saw an ongoing firework festival, so Sakurai immediately ran to get roasted corn. The fireworks soon began, and Uzaki breaks the formal relations between them by suddenly yanking him to a different location for a better view as she expressed her delight. Sakurai wakes up from his dream and sees two bouncy floaties across his face. He becomes uncomfortable as he realizes that he is on Uzaki's lap and wonders how the heck he got into this situation, but he instantly remembers passing out from that hit. She tells him the fireworks show has not yet started, but Sakurai is more concerned about standing up from where he is. However, she doesn't allow him, saying the person who helped her carry him said he must remain in a lying position for a while even after he wakes up. She apologizes for causing this again, but he tells her not to sweat it since it happened by accident. Meanwhile, Sakurai feels bad that when she was just getting back into her usual character, this happened, and she is back to looking like a bad Monday morning. He thinks for a moment and begins to yap. He tells her that when she started college the previous year, he never thought much about her becoming his junior again, but then she started acting like his pal, which, although got seriously on his nerves, gave him several experiences he would have never had on his own. Thanks to her, he encourages her to not be so gloomy as it messes all the fun up, and then suggests they go somewhere again, since they still have enough time in the summer break. She agrees to keep his lonely soul company, and the fireworks event starts immediately, making her very excited. But Sakurai can't see anything because of the cargo blocking his view. Just then, Uzaki asks him where he is going the next day because she would love to come. Some days later, Sakurai follows Huzaki home so he can return the money her mom overpaid for Disfuten, since Huzaki is refusing to take it. She tries to convince him that her mom told him to take the money, but he replies that the money was too much for a Futen replacement. Suddenly, Huzaki notices that he is keeping his face straight and barely looking at her. So she teases him that he is nervous, because this is the first time he is going to a girl's house. The shameless dude agrees instantly, and she tells him he doesn't have to be, as her house is not haunted anyway. But his mood changes immediately when she tells him they have cats he can pet. They soon get to the house, and as Huzaki's mom welcomes him, she becomes terrified because of his fierce look and big frame. Thinking that Huzaki never told her that the senior she was bringing home was a boy, Sakurai introduces himself politely and says he has come to return the excess on the money she gave him. But this makes Huzaki's mom even more terrified. Huzaki tells him to come inside, but he is reluctant, saying he will leave as soon as he returns the money. However, he instantly changes his mind when he sees them cute kitties he can touch. Later inside the house, Huzaki maintains social distancing with Sakurai, since she can't bear sitting close to him. Sakurai explains what he came there for, and Huzaki's mom begs her to come. She pulls her cheeks and tells her she never said the senior she always mentioned was a boy, and what the heck was she doing sleeping a boy's house? Huzaki's mom soon realizes that her daughter must be a pain in his tooth, and the dude agrees. Huzaki immediately gets offended, saying she did all that for him, but he disagrees and the two start their usual arguments. Huzaki's mom realizes that they are awfully and close and considers that he might be a good friend and senior for her daughter anyway. Just then, one of the cats climbs on her lap, while she is amused that Huzaki is already bringing a boy home. Meanwhile, the clueless stupid mofo starts staring at her kitty, which is right below her heavy jugs. Huzaki's mom mistakes this for him staring at her bazookas, making her uncomfortable and wonder if he wants her for breakfast and her daughter for dinner. It gets worse when Huzaki starts talking sus about the cat, and Sakurai replies that he can't wait to hold her, which Huzaki thinks he is referring to her. Sakurai soon leaves, but her heart starts to pound so hard because she can already see them recreating the famous Rido of Healer scene. The next day, Huzaki's mom visits Huzaki's workplace and is surprised to also see Sakurai there. Ami and her father start to sing Huzaki's praises to her ears, making a proud mother. However, Ami suddenly reveals that there is another factor besides Huzaki that's bringing customers, especially those moms, Sakurai. The old man speaks well about his manners and appearance, but Ami teases that cougars flock in there a lot since they need a young, energetic man who can bend them upside down. However, Huzaki's mom suddenly asks if Sakurai is into older women, shocking them. Emi clears that he is not, and her father adds that he and Huzaki are very good friends, thinking Huzaki's mom was asking because of her daughter. Realizing the silly question she asked, Huzaki's mom becomes very embarrassed and tells them to forget she said anything, but Ami wonders why the heck she is blushing. A few minutes later, before Huzaki's mom leaves, she goes inside to call Huzaki, but getting to the door, she overhears Sakurai telling Huzaki she likes them old, which immediately confirms her suspicions that he has eyes on her, but she doesn't know the two are talking about bean seeds. Later, at Sakurai's house, Huzaki keeps whooping Sakurai's bum in a game and mocks him for it, but he defends that he has never played the game before. Huzaki doesn't accept this excuse, saying she only just bought the game 2 days before, although she had spent the previous day training hard so she could kick his backside. He tells her that is dirty of her, but she replies that she would do anything to see him frustrated. Tired of her trolls, he stands up to grab a drink for them, both while Huzaki sits like she owns the place. However, Sakurai grumbles that she is the opposite of her mother, who is quiet and kind, instantly changing her mood. Following this, Huzaki starts to spy on her mom, feeling terrible, making her mom wonder if her daughter also has an eye on her. The next day at the cafe, Huzaki acts unusually quiet, which surprises the customers. Seeing this, Emi thinks Sakurai must be responsible for this and accuses him of it. He explains what happened the previous day, and the old man wonders what they should do because her vibe is needed for sales. Huzaki appears and asks them while they are standing around and talking, but Sakurai tells her to cut her useless acting. However, Huzaki continues to act nice, frustrating Sakurai because he can't bear it, and the old man wonders why he is uncomfortable being nice. Huzaki then tells Sakurai that she can always stop if he finds it unpleasant, but asks if he has anything to say to her first. So Sakurai humbly accepts that he messed up and apologizes, surprising Ami. Huzaki soon starts blaming Sakurai for always talking without thinking and annoying him, so they start yelling at each other. Then, a young girl comes to caution the two idiots to stop fighting. However, Ami tells the girl that this isn't an actual but a lover's fight, so the young girl offers them a lottery ticket and tells them to make up. They head to the lottery stand after and luckily win a trip to another city on their first try, unlike Yu, who is out of luck. Meanwhile, upon arriving at the city of Totori, two unknown people immediately start to spy on them. As they later stand by the road, Wondering where to go first, the two spies drive toward them, and it turns out to be Ami and Sakaki, shocking Huzaki and Sakurai. On their way, Huzaki expresses her surprise at seeing them here too. Ami replies that her dad gave her a summer break, while Sakaki says that he was already planning to go on a trip when Ami suggested they meet up with them here in Tottori. However, this is all a cap. Their real intention is to watch over Sakurai and Huzaki's relationship so they don't miss out on any important events during their vacation. Also, they are happy because those two are clueless about what a trip to Tottori really means. They first head to the sand dunes, which makes Huzaki very excited, so she challenges Sakurai to race to the ocean shore. Sakurai agrees to this, and as soon as they start to run, he finds it difficult to move his legs fast due to the sand. He suddenly sees Huzaki pass his side on a sandboard, and she trolls him that he cannot win her, but the sloppy surface suddenly levels, shocking her. She sees him fast approaching, so she quickly carries her board and starts running, but Sakurai soon catches up and reaches the finish line before her. She falls on her knees, exhausted from the race, but just then, a loving couple begs Sakurai to take a picture of them. After that, Sakurai tells Huzaki that they get going, but she says she can't stand up, so he grabs her hand and pulls her along on the sandboard, which amuses the two busybodies from afar. They head to a museum afterward, and while the tour guide shows them around, Huzaki brings a set of some ridiculous items, asking Sakurai to pay, but he can't refuse, so he doesn't look broke. Later outside, Huzaki comes running with 2 pieces of rabbit cakes, asking Sakurai to buy them. Even though he grumbles about why he is the one paying for her expenses, he pays anyway. She consumes her own, and while Sakurai attempts to put his cake in his mouth, she starts screaming to stop him. She later bites from his cake, without his permission, annoying him, but then she suddenly sees a silly couple feeding themselves and turns red, since she also just ate from Sakurai's hand. On their way to a shrine after, Ami tells Sakaki they are about to know the truth about Tottori. Before the shrine, Sakurai and Huzaki pray to the anime gods, and a few moments after praying, they pick different slips containing their luck. However, reading through, they both wonder what kind of luck these are, so they decide to check Google about the shrine only to realize that the shrine is meant for lovers, shocking them. Ami and Sakaki interrupt and start teasing them about them, both acting as lovers since, without knowing, Sakaki replays what they have done together to them and says everyone must have thought they were lovers, making Sakurai and Huzaki really embarrassed. Huzaki, pissed with all this, calls Sakaki a moron whose brain processes nothing else other than things about love. The tour continues, and while viewing a mountain Ronge, Sakaki comes up with his love talk again, pissing Sakurai and Huzaki off again. Huzaki, in a bid to escape the trash they are talking about, suggests to Sakurai that they enter one of the tour rides, but as they plan to get in, they find out it's a couple's seat, embarrassing them and giving Sakaki and others the opportunity to tease them again. On a ride later, the two sit together feeling so embarrassed, with Sakurai wondering that he came to enjoy the trip and not to be involved in something like this. He gets very uncomfortable and starts yelling, telling Huzaki that they should only focus on what they came here for, which is to enjoy the tour and leave the trash the others are saying. Huzaki accepts this, but on getting to the other end of the ride, they find lovers lurking around, frustrating them even more. At the end that evening, Sakaki asks Sakurai why he is so slow in seizing his opportunities, but Sakurai replies that he is not that kind of way with Huzaki. Sakaki pushes him against the wall with his face up close, telling Sakurai he has to take the opportunity. Meanwhile, Huzaki suddenly appears at that moment and finds them in this sus position, so she immediately brings out her phone and takes their picture. Later to the hot spring, Huzaki gets all sweaty and asks Sakurai for his towel, but he refuses to give it to her. She attempts to get it herself but slips and falls on him, rubbing her melons on his body. Following this, they bathe in the bathhouse and Huzaki complains about Sakurai refusing to give her his towel when she asked for it. Sakurai overhears her from the men's bath and lashes back at her, which leads to a verbal exchange between them. The next day, while the two walk ahead checking out the creepy artifacts at the museum, Sakaki watches them and is disappointed that nothing has changed between them, despite all their efforts, but Ami tells him that they are good enough just as they are. Some days later, after the trip, Huzaki suddenly calls Sakurai to ask if she can come over, and he reluctantly tells her yes. After he drops the call, he wonders why the idiot has made his place her new home. Besides, she has been littering his apartment with useless items she doesn't need, so he considers opening up and telling her about it. She soon arrives, and this time, with another useless item, annoying him. Upon entering, he asks her what she thinks of his place to see if she is smart enough to realize it, but she is too slow and talks about the presence of a ghost in his room, scaring him. He tells her to cut the BS and points to the mess she has turned his living room into. He tells her to start taking some of the items home today, and asks about the giant beanbag she brought along today. She defends that her backside hurts from always sitting on the floor during their gaming marathons, and blames him for not making his place more comfortable for his guests. Hearing this, he agrees to let the beanbag stay but tells her she has to choose from the items around what she needs and the ones she doesn't. He brings out a garbage bag immediately, telling her the useless ones go into the bag while the others go home with her. After a while of sorting the trash and fighting while at it, they finish up, but Sakurai won't stop lecturing Uzaki on how to be reasonable. So she gets up in discomfort from his long tirade and goes to the fridge to grab a drink. Meanwhile, Sakurai suddenly sees a strange bag in there and thinks she is now keeping her useless items there too. She tries to explain it as something else, but he doesn't listen. He becomes shocked when he discovers it's a bag containing food items, and she tells him she thought of cooking for them today since it's been a while. She starts to prepare the food, and Sakurai, feeling sober, apologizes for jumping to conclusions earlier. The next day at the cafe, Ami and her father suddenly ask if Sakurai can cook, so he can be of help sometimes, but when he attempts to reply, Uzaki interrupts, mocking him because she doesn't think he can even boil an egg. Bro decides to silence her by accepting to cook, claiming he is an expert since he cooks once in 2 months. He soon prepares a burnt offering because that is definitely not food, and seeing this, Uzaki bursts into laughter like she just listened to a Kevin Hart joke. In the following scene, Sakurai is at Uzaki's house for cooking lessons from her mom, and as he kneads the dough before him, Uzaki's mom is surprised that he is actually a well-mannered gentleman, unlike she thought since his eyes look fierce. She heads to her room after feeling rizzed up and reasons that as long as she doesn't look at his eyes, she will be comfortable talking to him. Meanwhile, Sakurai sees their cats and melts immediately, so he gets talking with Uzaki about whether to pet them or not. Uzaki encourages him to move on one of them since she seems to be interested in him. At this time, Uzaki's mom is at the door, overhearing them, and she becomes embarrassed, thinking Uzaki is pimping her out to her friend. She considers walking in on them to correct them, but as she enters, she switches up to asking about the dough they made because she is embarrassed. Following this, Sakurai and Uzaki go wall climbing, and while Sakurai climbs like he was born to do this, Uzaki struggles with it. Uzaki gets mad when she sees Sakurai ridiculing her, and she asks how the heck he has so much energy, to which he replies that he works out in his spare time. However, he tells her she is just mad because she can't catch up to him, but she replies that there is no point in building some useless muscles anyway.
Stop the cap!
Seeing this, the instructor gives them a more difficult challenge, making Uzaki feel like she might die on this. Sakurai gets to it immediately and climbs like a pro. So Uzaki decides to prove her strength too, but she gets stuck midway, so she returns to the ground feeling ashamed. However, she swallows her pride and tells him to climb again while she watches him, and as he climbs up the wall, she gets rizzed up, saying he looks like he did back in their old school. In the next scene, while Sakurai prepares to sing in a karaoke bar, he suddenly sees Uzaki and Ami and feels ashamed to continue, knowing the kind of people they are. They encourage him to continue with Uzaki, also mocking him at the same time, saying he was doing solo movies, and now he is doing solo karaoke. Sakurai feels terrible, but calls the receptionist to add them to the arrangements. Several minutes later, Amy and Uzaki get drunk and decide to change into hot clothes to apologize to him for making him uncomfortable. They sit down on his two sides and sandwich in between their melons, asking him if this pacifies his frustration. However, he finds it difficult to respond because he is at the edge of pouring out his cream. But the girls think he is only trying to prove he is Sigma, so they change into more provocative dresses, with Uzaki looking juicy in her bunny costume. They ask if his mood has changed, and he replies that he is no longer angry, just to make them stop. Afterward, Amy casually asks him what cosplay he likes best, and he replies that he likes the bunny girl.
It was at this moment that he knew he fucked up.
He immediately gets embarrassed as he realizes that this is what Uzaki is cosplaying as, and the two girls laugh at him, calling him a naughty, thirsty loser. Later that night, while it rains, Sakurai hears the doorbell ring, and he quickly heads to the door only to find Uzaki wet. He attempts to go get her a towel, but she suddenly tells him she can't go out with him anymore, shocking him. She then says she has done something that cannot be undone, which is why she can't hang out with him ever again. Sakurai gets curious and asks her what happened, assuring that he will do anything necessary to help. Her facial expression instantly changes as she hears this, confusing him, and she reveals that she discovered she hadn't touched the report she had for homework over summer break. She then complains about why college students still have summer homework, blah blah blah. But knowing where this is heading, Bro shuts the door against her. She starts to bang the door, asking him to help her with her report if he wants her to hang out with her next summer. However, he tells her to do it herself, but she continues to beg him till he reconsiders. The next day, Sakurai lifts some boxes at the cafe while he complains to the old man about how Uzaki has gotten too comfortable with him. The old man laughs at his predicament, and then he tries to lift one of the boxes. Sakurai tries to stop him, but he tells him he's got this, only to end up almost breaking his spine. Sakurai takes him to the chiropractor immediately while Ami and Huzaki stay back at the cafe to engage in some useless conversations that are not necessary for the story. Meanwhile, Ami's father is now having his back reset by some zesty creep who is ready to take Gramps to the moon. During their meaningless talk, Ami asks Huzaki what she and Sakurai were like in their old school, wondering if they used to hang out like they currently do, and she replies that they only started hanging out when they met again in college. Back in high school, their meetups were strictly for the swim club business, and she was terrified by his creepy look the first day she saw him. However, she adds that after a while she soon realized that despite his fierce look, he wasn't scary after all. Ami suddenly asks if that is why she now talks like him too, shocking her. Ami adds that Huzaki never uses Gen Z slangs with her, but only when Sakurai is around, making her so embarrassed because she never realized that's what she has been doing. She quickly excuses herself and runs home all red, amusing Ami that she has digged up a great treasure. The following day, Huzaki meets Ami, Sakaki, and her father to ask how Sakurai acts when he is drunk, because she has never seen him drunk before. Ami replies that Sakurai knows how to hold his liquor, so he might never get drunk, but Sakaki replies that while Sakurai is no lightweight, he does get drunk. However, Sakaki adds that Sakurai just knows his limits and sticks to them. Huzaki becomes excited that someone has seen him drunk before, so she asks Sakaki about it. Sakaki wonders if she is planning to sneak up on him to gag on his meat when he is sleeping or something, but she reveals that she hates that Sakurai has seen her booze-related screw-ups, so she is only trying to drag him down with her. She then tells Sakaki that this is the best time to scheme since Sakurai is not around. She suggests they host a drinking party, to which Ami quickly shows interest, but Huzaki tells her given how she behaved the last time at the karaoke bar, she will prefer to do it alone. Later that evening, Huzaki visits Sakurai, and he asks her why she suddenly wants to come over and drink. She prepares some spicy foods following the strategy Sakaki gave her to get him to drink a lot. She follows the other plans and eventually gets him drunk. She then remembers Sakaki telling her that when Sakurai is drunk, his judgment is usually off the radar, and in this state, his mental defenses are zero and he can't lie. Sakaki further informed that Sakurai is big on minding her limits because he doesn't want to show that side to anyone. Now that Sakurai is in that state, Huzaki starts poking his cheek, and he suddenly thanks her for all the cooking. She tells him she would have preferred an honest opinion without the booze's influence, and he tells her he's too shy. This prompts her to say that this is his chance to come out with all the stuff he couldn't say before. And the first thing he mentions is love, suddenly sending her speechless. She grabs the next can of booze and starts gulping immediately until she gets drunk too. Sakaki soon appears and meets both of them wasted, so he takes Sakurai to his futon, while Huzaki also follows suit, unconsciously lying beside Sakurai on the same futon. Afterward, Sakaki takes his leave. The next morning, they wake up beside each other and become embarrassed, wondering why they are in the same futon. At the cafe later, they both report the situation to Ami and her father, who immediately close the cafe because they want to hear more gist. Sakurai and Huzaki tell them they can't remember what happened except that they woke up beside each this morning, shocking Ami and her father, who think they have gone horizontal. Sakurai quickly defends that they didn't do anything as they can't remember doing it, but the old man tells him he can't be so sure since he didn't do anything. Sakurai gets pissed as he claims that nothing really happened. He then tells Huzaki to contribute, since stayed up later than he did, but as she tries to remember, she recalls what Sakurai said and gives a cheeky smile, shocking Sakurai. Ami instantly realizes something must have happened and wishes she was there too, even if it meant forcing herself in. She begs Sakurai to allow her to tag along next time and he agrees, but Huzaki tells him to better get a guest futon. Huzaki then asks if they should do it again today, but he shockingly tells her school begins again the next day, spoiling her mood because it means summer break is over. Seeing this, Sakurai gets pissed, asking her if hanging out is the only reason she breathes. The next day at college, Huzaki meets Sakurai and complains that she is having the end of summer shock since they didn't hang out enough. However, Sakurai tells her to stop being ridiculous, as it doesn't have to be summer before they can hang out. They can anything. She gets rizzed up immediately, and seeing her red face, Sakurai tells her he didn't mean like that, but it's already too late because Huzaki now thinks he is dying hard to hang out with her. Summer break is officially over, and Sakaki spots Huzaki in class, looking like she just lost a battle with life itself. He tries to check in on her, but her inner darkness is taking over. Turns out, she's mourning the death of her freedom as summer break ended too soon. But Sakaki knows there's something deeper messing with her. A quick scan of the room, and boom, he figures that Sakurai's not here yet. To snap her out of her funk, he suggests planning some hangout sessions, which reminds her of the time Sakurai said they could always chill together. Suddenly, her mood does a full 180. Curious about their dynamic, Sakaki asks if they've always been inseparable. Huzaki, being Huzaki, casually drops the fact that she used to see Sakurai as a potential felon back in their old school. She even tells him that Amy already knows about this little fun fact, but Sakaki, feeling a little left out, asks what exactly made her change her mind. She enters a flashback immediately and remembers a traumatic swimming lesson where Sakurai looked like he was planning her demise. Then, a strangely touching moment where he cheered her up with corn. Sakaki's hooked, demanding more details, while Sakurai is out in the hallway, blissfully unaware of the slander taking place in his absence. When Sakurai finally walks in, Yuzaki greets him the only way she knows how, by giving him a series of punches. She starts grilling him on why he's late, and the usual chaos unfolds. Seeing the two idiots this way, Sakaki pitches a new bowling alley as the perfect place for them to release their pent-up aggression. Uzaki immediately starts roasting Sakurai, claiming he probably doesn't even know what a bowling ball looks like, and this makes him want to show her who the boss is. Post-class, they hit the bowling alley, and Uzaki suggests a bet to spice things up. Sakaki wants no part in their never-ending toxic rivalry, but she keeps poking at Sakurai, who remains suspiciously calm. When Sakaki calls him out, Sakurai finally reveals that getting all hyped will only make him lose to her. Uzaki goes first and leaves a few pins standing, while Sakurai, still ignoring her antics, steps up and annihilates all the pins on his first try. That's when he drops the bomb that he's been secretly practicing just to destroy her at this game. Uzaki, instead of being impressed, immediately starts to mock that he was bowling alone too. Now officially pissed, Sakurai goes for his second throw, but Uzaki, being the menace she is, starts sabotaging him. She pulls out every dirty trick in the book, but despite her best efforts, he still manages to win. Sakaki suggests a ridiculous punishment for her loss, which Sakurai wisely refuses. Naturally, this only leads to another challenge because these two have no chill. Meanwhile, over at the cafe, Ami's father is about to leave, so he asks Ami to lock up. The moment he's gone, her inner creep emerges. She rushes off to change, already plotting something diabolical. It turns out that her new obsession is dressing Yuzaki in a bunny costume. Moments later, Yuzaki and Sakurai arrive at the cafe, and Ami immediately pushes them into the changing rooms before they can protest. Yuzaki tries on the first outfit and loves it, but quickly realizes it's a disaster as her rice cakes are refusing to stay contained. The second outfit is a dream come true for Ami, but raises Yuzaki's suspicions. She demands to know if her dad approved these new uniforms, and Ami expertly dodges the question. Yuzaki cycles through the rest of the outfits, but she remains skeptical. Eventually, Ami cracks and admits that this has been her dream for way too long. Sakurai, meanwhile, has his own wardrobe crisis, as Ami only gave him a pair of leather shorts. Apparently, her grand plan is for him to hypnotize the female customers with his abs. Before they can process how depraved she really is, Ozaki's mom walks in. Ami immediately grabs her and begs her to wear the bunny suit too. Ozaki's mom, horrified, just wants to go home, but Ami keeps rambling about how her naughty idea to ensure the customers reach Cloud 9. However, she soon realizes that her dad is behind her, boiling with anger, and she becomes scared. In the end, Ami is forced to wear the bunny costume herself, which reveals her melons, and becomes a side attraction to Sakurai, who can't keep his focus. Later that night, Ozaki keeps yelling at Sakurai to stay up for gaming, but her mom suddenly calls her, giving bro the perfect excuse to knock out. A few days later in class, Sakurai tells Sakaki about the whole ordeal before passing out on his desk. Yuzaki arrives with the other girls, and they start chatting about their boyfriends and the joys of being in love. Yuzaki, however, dismisses relationships as overrated. The girls, convinced that she and Sakurai are already dating, push for details, and Sakaki sees this as his golden opportunity to finally hear her true feelings about their relationship. But he is disappointed when he gets a masterclass in backhanded compliments. Yuzaki declares that Sakurai is a lonely, miserable hermit who desperately needs her friendship to function. Sakurai, unable to keep up the act any longer, storms out to cool off. He finds a quiet spot, but exhaustion takes over. Just as he's about to drift off, Yuzaki stumbles upon him. She tries to talk, but when she hears his snores, she gives up and sits beside him. Before long, she also dozes off, and Sakaki eventually finds them, now fully cuddled up like lovers, while the other girls gather around, wondering what the heck. Amat eventually sees the photos and gets upset, thinking they're hiding their relationship from her. To clear up any misunderstandings, they all agree to hang out again. While shopping at the mall, Yuzaki admits that she's jealous of how Ami barely has any classes, and Sakurai bluntly tells her to try using her brain at least once in this anime. Offended, she fires back, saying at least she has friends and isn't as lonely as he is. Annoyed, he tells her to stop relying on him for help and walks off to change. She keeps ranting about how dumb he is until Sakaki cuts in, explaining that Sakurai isn't actually a complete airhead. Not one to back down, Yuzaki turns the roast session on Sakaki, questioning whether he's even going to graduate since she can count the number of times he's shown up to campus. When Sakurai returns, he tells her not to worry about Sakaki since he purposely picked the easiest course to coast through. Later, Yuzaki goes swimsuit shopping with Amy and tells her about the time she and Sakurai hung out at the pool. Remembering how he complimented her swimsuit before they got back into the water, she's determined to raid the mall for even better options. Hearing this, Amy immediately feels like she has fulfilled her life's purpose, since she was the one who advised Sakurai to start complimenting her. After shopping, they head to a soccer field to continue their hangout. Sakaki enthusiastically tries to get Emi to appreciate the beauty of the sport, but all she cares about is her dream of something extremely sus happening to Sakurai. To escape another one of her weird fantasies, Sakaki asks Sakurai if he's up for a light match. Sakurai hesitates, but Sakaki reassures him that he isn't expecting much from either of them. Just as they're about to start, they notice 3 college guys bullying a group of youngjins practicing their soccer skills. At first, Sakaki finds it pathetic that grown dudes are picking on those smallies, until the young boys completely destroy them with relentless roasts, leaving them too depressed to talk back. Before they can recover, a redhead from the group scolds Sakaki's crew for just watching. Sakaki tells him to relax since they all paid for access to the field, but the guy immediately recognizes him and brings up a mixer they attended together. Sakaki, however, has zero recollection of ever meeting them. The trio introduces themselves as Sakamoto, Kawakami, and Hamada, hoping to jog his memory. They reminisce about how much fun they had, but Sakaki only remembers them begging him to rizz up some chicks because they couldn't with their paper bag faces. The guys recall how depressing the mixer was since Sakaki left with all the girls, and in response, Sakaki ruthlessly explains the harsh reality of their low chances with Giles until their souls get crushed. Just when they're at their lowest, they suddenly see Uzaki and Ami with their pointed bazookas and desire to invest into those assets. They challenge Sakaki to a match, stating that if he wins, they clear his tab, but if the trio wins, they get a shot with the girls. Sakaki immediately declares that Uzaki is off limits but offers up Amy, saying she's not taken. He then picks one of the young dudes to complete their team. The match starts, and after watching Sakaki dominate, Ozaki calls out Sakurai for being completely useless, warning him not to ruin Sakaki's streak. Sakamoto and his crew take a break to strategize, realizing their only hope is exploiting Sakurai's lack of skill. But as the score gap widens, Sakaki tells Sakurai to relax since a comeback is impossible. Sakurai, determined to help, asks for advice. Sakaki gives him a simple tip, and suddenly, something inside him clicks. Ozaki immediately recognizes the shift in his expression. The next moment, Sakurai charges in with the ball. Sakamoto rushes up, thinking he can stop him, only to get obliterated by the sheer force of Sakurai's kick. As he crumples to the ground, Ami watches in awe, tears of joy streaming down her face. Sakurai doesn't stop there. He bulldozes Kawakami next, sending him flying. Amada braces himself, convinced he can withstand the impact, but Sakurai unleashes his most powerful shot yet, crushing Hamada's ribs and scoring his first ever goal. As he celebrates finally being useful, it dawns on him that he might have just committed a crime. Without hesitation, he bolts from the scene with Sakaki and the girls. Later, Sakurai heads to Izaki's place, and they talk about his udon until she sees another bestie duo run by, sending her into a fantasy spiral about what life would be like if she were his senpai. At first, it's a sweet thought, but as she imagines his usual emotionless face, it starts to piss her off. Determined to punish him, she pulls him down to her level and refuses to let go, until he points out that her watermelons are suffocating him. He realizes that she was just into Lulu, and she throws her bag in his face, saying they need to hurry home because her mom is waiting. Moments later, Ozaki and her mom try his udon, and she compliments how good he has become. He smugly pulls out multiple wraps, explaining that he's been practicing for months. Feeling confident, he asks if she can teach him something new, but Ozaki shuts him down, reminding him that he still doesn't even know how to cut them properly. After verbally obliterating him, he feels sad and turns to her mom for help. When he demonstrates his cutting technique, Suki moves closer to correct him, but accidentally presses her jugs against his arm. Embarrassed, she quickly steps back and apologizes. However, she suddenly remembers the past cultured moments they have had together, as she thinks that this dude is dangerous to be eyeing both mother and daughter. However, she realizes that Bro isn't even giving her any attention, which Uzaki explains as him being in the zone where he doesn't give a heck about nothing. Seeing this as an opportunity for an investigation, Uzaki's mom sits down with Uzaki, asking if she's had any special moment with Sakurai recently. Uzaki instantly panics, recalling waking up next to him while Sakaki and her friends took pictures. Convinced that her mom has somehow found out, she confesses, but her vague explanation leads her mom to wildly misinterpret the situation, to think Sakurai must have jiggled her jugs in front of their friends. Suki's heart breaks immediately, and she heads to her room because it should have been her, not Uzaki. Meanwhile, Sakurai finally perfects his cutting technique. Later that night, Kiri comes home for dinner and complains about eating udon again. Ozaki casually mentions that her senpai made a lot, but Kiri misunderstands, thinking she's talking about one of her cute friends. So the idiot instantly falls in love with the udon as he devours it like his life depends on it. A few days later, the college festival preparations are in full swing, so Ozaki tracks down Sakurai to make plans. But when he casually mentions that he's skipping the event, she's left in shock. It expresses that he's an antisocial loner, and the idea of attending without any of his friends hosting booths sounds pointless. Annoyed, Ozaki stops trying to convince him and instead asks how he plans to spend the next few days. He starts explaining the new skins he's trying to unlock in his game, and when she takes a look, he goes on about why the festival doesn't interest him. After he snatches the game back to continue playing, she stares at him for a long moment before accepting the harsh truth that this guy is doomed to be a loner forever. With that, she switches gears and suggests they hang out at his place, even offering to cook in exchange. Right then, Sakaki shows up looking like he just lost a fight with a garbage truck and overhears their plan to ditch the festival. Concerned for his well-being, they ask what happened, and he explains that he joined the planning committee and suggested a way to boost participation. Unfortunately, his great idea backfired as he is now drowning in work because of it. His plan involves getting students more engaged by offering a lottery prize for active participation. Hearing this, Sakurai and Ozaki get curious, so he shows them one of the prizes. Ozaki immediately loses it when she sees the console up for grabs, as it's the one she's been dreaming about ever since its release. Sakurai, noticing how badly she wants it, suddenly changes his mind about the festival. His decision leaves Ozaki confused, so she asks why, and he simply says it's to increase their chances of winning the console. Sakaki then tips them off, saying that visiting the occult club might boost their odds before he rushes back to his never-ending festival prep. On the day of the event, the sheer size of the crowd has Sakurai instantly regretting his decision, but Ozaki tells him to focus on collecting stamps as fast as possible. As they make their way through the booths, actually enjoying some of them, they finally reach the occult club and join the line. While waiting, they gap about random things, including Sakurai's gaming progress, until he starts noticing the weird looks they're both getting. A quick scan of the line reveals that they're surrounded by girls, and before he can process why, it's their turn. Turns out the person reading fortunes is a familiar girl named Etho, who explains that her readings from last year earned her some fame, leading to her joining the occult club. They take a seat and consider using the reading to help Sakurai figure out his post-graduation plans, but Etho quickly shuts that down, saying these readings are strictly for people working on their romantic lives. That's when it clicks. This explains why the line was filled with girls. Apologizing for the mix-up, they try to leave, but the entire occult club blocks the exit. Hoping to avoid more drama, Ozaki suggests they just get the reading over with. Moments later, Etho finishes and takes a deep breath before revealing the results. According to her, Sakurai and Ozaki have one of the strongest romantic fortunes she's ever seen. She outright calls them a perfect match, but knows they're not dating, so she demands to know why they're pretending not to see their obvious chemistry. Both of them freeze, struggling to mask their reactions, but Etho keeps running her mouth until the other club members force her to stop. Finally, they're allowed to leave. Just as they step out, Ami, who had been lurking in the shadows, removes her mask and thanks them for their help before slipping away to continue her stalking mission. After changing into her regular clothes, she calls Sakaki, who is barely holding himself together, and updates him on how smoothly his plan for Sakurai and Ozaki is going, before realizing her stupid self has lost track of them. Meanwhile, the two of them are sitting on a bench, and Sakurai is sweating buckets, still reeling from the fortune-telling. He expects Ozaki to be just as freaked out, so he glances at her, only to find her oddly happy. When he asked about it, she tells him not to overthink it. With that, they head off to see if their efforts paid off, but in the end, someone else wins the console. The next day, classes are canceled for students to dismantle their booths, but Sakurai spends the entire morning lying in bed, obsessing over the reading while Ozaki cooks. He can't shake off the image of her smiling back on the bench and wonders why she didn't have the same reaction as him. Eventually, he gets up and asks if she needs help, but she tells him not to worry. So, he sets the table and forces himself to stop overanalyzing everything. When the food is finally served, Ozaki gets lost in her own delusions, convinced that Sakurai is hopelessly in love with her. With a smug grin, she asks if he has anything special to say. He thanks her for the food, but that's not what she meant. He keeps throwing out random thank yous, trying to guess what she wants, until she remembers that his brain processes things in 3 to 5 business days, excluding weekends and holidays. Frustrated, she vents her anger on the table until he apologizes, still having no clue what he did wrong. Eventually, she calms down by reinforcing her own delusions, and in a brief moment of peace, passes him the spice before they continue eating. That night, Ozaki hops into the bath, but instead of relaxing, she starts spiraling into full-on Delulu mode, all thanks to Etho's reading. She overthinks so hard that she almost drowns in the tub, calling her brother and mom's attention. The next day, she pulls up to the squad with receipts, convinced that Sakurai is madly in love with her. While Sakaki actually thinks she might be onto something, Amy and her dad know the bitter truth. Sakaki, determined to play matchmaker, asks Ami for advice. Too bad she's already yeeted herself out of the convo, leaving him to figure it out alone. They both agree to be Team Cupid, but before they can strategize, Ozaki starts raving about a new game Sakurai just copped. Apparently, he's planning a full-day gaming marathon. Ami's dad asks why she isn't playing with him, and she proudly declares that she's giving him space. Sakaki is skeptical, knowing fully well that she is not the type to respect boundaries. But then she casually mentions how Sakurai might pull some cultured moods if they were alone together, and it all makes sense. Sakaki hits her with a reality check, reminding her that she literally spent a whole night at his place before and nothing happened. Ozaki, in true denial fashion, claims this time it's different, because the reading might have changed Sakurai's mind, and you never know what a frisky guy can do. Amy snaps, and she's 2 seconds away from ending Ozaki's entire existence. But her dad holds her back, telling her that violence is not the way out, and vents about how frustrating it is to hear Ozaki sound like she's caught Sakurai's case of brain rot. After some deep reflection, they all realize the obvious. These two are just way too dumb to figure out their own feelings. Following that, Ozaki suddenly receives a call from Sakurai, with him inviting her over for some gaming, and instead of just saying yes like she normally does, she plays hard to get, making it seem like he's begging for her attention. But as soon as the call ends, she speedruns her way to his place. Meanwhile, Ami and Sakaki start plotting, determined to push these two into relationship territory. Sakaki suggests trapping them together until they figure it out, but Ami, thankfully, has a plan that doesn't involve felony charges. They decide to tweak Sakurai and Ozaki's work shifts to study them separately over the next few days. Ami endures Ozaki's endless rambling until the sun goes down, losing brain cells by the second. Finally, Sakaki cuts in and asks the million-dollar question if she is sure Sakurai has feelings for her. Ozaki, despite all logic, convinces herself that he does. That's when Sakaki drops the bomb. Sakurai has a whole fan club of hotties thirsting for him. Ami's dad backs him up, claiming even the local aunties are eyeing Sakurai's glizzy, and Ozaki's confidence takes a nosedive. To make matters worse, Sakaki reminds her that if Sakurai stays single, all those baddies are going to shoot their shot. Even Ami isn't immune. Sakaki straight up exposes her for being weak to Sakurai's biceps. Ami tries to deny it, but her dad backs it up, making her so embarrassed that she can't even get a word in. Sakaki, being the menace he is, flexes his six-pack abs in her face, and she accidentally spills the truth that she actually doesn't mind being rammed to the wall by Sakurai's stick. Ozaki, now properly panicked, starts seeing Sakurai as prime boyfriend material instead of just a gaming buddy. Later that night, Sakurai offers to walk Ozaki home, and she takes off to change faster than the speed of light. Sakurai, being the clueless himbo he is, invites Sakaki to join them, but Sakaki has other plans. Left with no choice, Sakurai awkwardly tries to chat with Ami, but she avoids eye contact, afraid that she might be caught eyeing him again. On way home, Ozaki is oddly quiet, and when Sakurai asks why, she hides her spiraling thoughts behind fake enthusiasm about making dinner. Meanwhile, Ami is busy plotting Sakaki's downfall for exposing her thirst, and her dad is left wondering where he went wrong in raising her. Cut to Sakurai at Ozaki's place. He's measuring salt like he's defusing a bomb, and Ozaki's mom, Suki, steps in to introduce him to the ancient art of eyeballing seasoning. Sakurai, in awe, asks if he's skilled enough for such a high-level technique. She patiently guides him, making him memorize the salt amount like it's a sacred ritual. Ozaki, meanwhile, tries to shake off Sakaki's words but ends up spiraling even further. Suki takes a break, so Ozaki gives her a shoulder massage, casually asking what she thinks of Sakurai. Suki, fearing this is the moment she's been dreading, asks her to repeat the question, but before Ozaki can, the cats start acting up, saving her from answering. While Ozaki feeds the cats, she goes full-on daydream mode, imagining Sakurai and a classmate trying to kiss and getting swarmed by fangirls who also want a taste of his lips. Meanwhile, Suki is lost in her own thoughts until Sakurai suddenly appears beside her and calls out to her, nearly giving her a heart attack. She regains composure and resumes her cooking lesson, but Sakurai, feeling guilty for scaring her, decides it would be easier if he knew her first name, so he would have just called out to her from the kitchen next time. The moment he asks, she nearly spills hot oil all over herself, convinced he's trying to rizz her up because he wants her to. She hesitantly tells him her name, feeling very embarrassed that this might kickstart her cougar tendencies. However, Sakurai just goes back to frying croquettes like nothing happened. Ozaki returns just in time and Suki calls her aside to tell her she needs to look out for a type of guy who is genuine, just like the clueless mofo a few inches away. Sakurai finishes cooking, and Ozaki takes a bite, When he thanks Suki with an excited sparkle in his eyes and calls her by her first name, Izaki immediately becomes suspicious. The next day, Sakurai swings by the cafe to check on Izaki, but she acts like he's a biohazard in human form. Ami and her dad instantly clock that he's done something dumb, but when they ask, Sakurai swears he has no clue why she's mad. Before they can cook up a rescue plan, Suki strolls in, wondering if Izaki's mood swings are ruining her work. Ami and her dad reassure her that Izaki's working just fine, except for the tiny detail that she now loathes Sakurai's entire existence. Ami figures he must have unknowingly messed up, but Sakurai keeps pleading innocent until both Ami and her dad have a eureka moment. They lean in as Suki spills everything that happened, right up to the moment he started thanking her for her help. Turns out, Sakurai has never called a girl by her first name, meaning Suki was his first. Ami lays into him for being this oblivious, but Sakurai, still confused, tries to defend himself, saying he avoids first names out of respect. Izaki, however, isn't trying to hear any of that. To fix their not a couple but definitely a couple crisis, Ami suggests he call everyone by their first names for the rest of the day. Sakurai makes an excuse that he doesn't even know her dad's name, and the old man introduces himself as Akihiko. Akihiko then orders Sakurai to make things right by using Izaki's first name, and joins the girls in hyping him up. Sakurai, now sweating bullets, bows and delivers a heartfelt apology. But Izaki isn't satisfied. If he really wants forgiveness, he has to say her first name. She makes him suffer a little longer before finally giving in, stepping closer, and flipping the tables by calling his first name too. Suki, watching this whiplash-inducing turnaround, gets suspicious. Later, Sakurai heads home after an entire day of Izaki spamming his name in every sentence. He finds a gym coupon in his locker and decides to check it out. Once there, he warms up and scopes out the equipment, ready to start his fitness arc. He's just about to hit the bench press when Imura and Kuroki pop up, warning him that lifting without a spotter is a one-way ticket to getting flattened. Before he can respond, Fujio rolls in, all excited to see a new recruit. They'd all watch as Sakurai casually reps over 200 pounds like it's a warm-up set. As he starts slowing down, Fujio channels his inner drill sergeant, pushing him for one more rep. Imura and Kuroki suggest letting the poor guy breathe, but Fujio calls Sakurai a spineless dude for even thinking about tapping out. Somehow, Sakurai musters the strength for that final rep, leaving Imura in shock, because usually nobody survives a full set under Fujio's watch. Hyped up, Fujio bombards Sakurai with workout ideas, pitching the dream of looking like a walking protein shake. He even suggests dragging his friends into the madness, but Sakurai knows Izaki would rather set her money on fire than pay for a daily near-death experience. On his way home, Sakurai texts Izaki, asking for another cooking lesson with her mom. Meanwhile, at Izaki's house, Fujio bursts through the door, buzzing about Sakurai's gym gains. Before he can even settle in, he asks Izaki if she's finally ready to hit the gym. She shoves that down immediately, but then Fujio suddenly realizes the potential dangers of her assets in a testosterone-infested jungle and tells her to forget about it. Izaki then tells her mom about Sakurai's text, and Suki happily agrees to teach him more kitchen skills. When she mentions her senpai's obsession with perfecting his cooking, Fujio misinterprets her, thinking they're discussing a girl. He starts hyping up this mystery woman as wife material, until Izaki corrects him, revealing that her senpai is in fact a dude. Fujio instantly short-circuits. Seconds later, Yanaja returns from school, changes, and joins the chaos. Fujio, still stuck on Izaki's love life, drops a bombshell that his daughter has caught feelings. Kiri, overhearing this, cracks up at the poor fool who fell into her trap. Fujio then launches into a full-blown interrogation, declaring the qualities her boyfriend must have before he can approve of him. Yanaja and Suki warn him to chill before he pressures Izaki into keeping secrets. While Suki starts on dinner, Fujio's questioning somehow turns into a language lesson, and Izaki thinks she's off the hook, until Yanaja starts prying about Sakurai. Kiri jumps in, demanding to know who's dumb enough to fall for his gremlin of a sister. Izaki fires back, reminding him that no girl wants him because he is short and ugly as heck. Yanajit asks how tall Sakurai is, and when Izaki casually says he's over 6 feet, both Kiri and Fujio suddenly develop a height complex. Fujio starts grilling Izaki with rapid-fire questions about Sakurai's personality, and she defends him, which only makes Yanagia more intrigued. Then she accidentally reveals that his place is nice and clean, but immediately realizes that she has just messed up. Everyone immediately jumps to the obvious conclusion, so Kiri and Yanaja demand to know why she's hanging out at his place. Assuming that she is already having her treasures explored, Izaki, now cornered, has to explain her very boring and completely pure relationship. Suki, finally snapping out of her delusions, is shocked that Izaki's love life is not really spicy as she had thought. Fujio, however, isn't fooled. He sees right through her and knows she's head over heels for Sakurai. Izaki insists she's just saving Sakurai from a lifetime of loneliness, but the more she argues, the more obvious it gets that she likes him. Meanwhile, Yanajit quietly goes to Tsuki for more dirt, and Tsuki starts gushing about all the meals she's taught Sakurai to make. Kiri, hoping for a sliver of hope, is crushed when he realizes the legendary udon wasn't made by a cute college girl like he thought, but rather by a fellow bro like Sakurai. Fed up with all of this, Ozaki storms off for a bath while Fujio, still fuming, rants about how Sakurai still hasn't officially asked her out, despite her already acting like his wife. However, Tsuki, naturally, spins a wild theory that maybe Sakurai hasn't made a move because he's actually interested in her and is finding it difficult to open up. Meanwhile, the man himself is out here doing some abs exercises and pauses at intervals to think about Ozaki before getting back to destroying stomach. Ozaki, soaking in the tub, replays her dad's words in her head, but she is still deep in denial, not realizing that she's already too deep in love. A few days later, Sakurai has fully embraced the gym bro lifestyle, throwing himself into the weights like his life depends on it, because apparently avoiding thoughts of Ozaki is a full-time workout. Meanwhile, Ozaki is starting to feel the void of not spending every waking moment with him. After obliterating his biceps, Sakurai gears up for the bench press, and his new gym obsession makes Imura side-eye him. When asked, he brushes it off as just wanting a good pump, right before Fujio strolls in, ready to spot him. Fujio, having also clocked Sakurai's gym addiction, immediately guesses a girl must have broken his heart. The entire workout turns into a live coaching session, with Fujio dishing out unsolicited love advice before casually mentioning that he's also struggling with his daughter's love life. Imura, not here for the family drama, tells him to leave that mess at home, but Fujio insists he has no other outlet, so they let him vent. Once he reveals his daughter's age, Imura tells him to put on his big boy pants and move on, but Fujio isn't having it, saying Ozaki is still his little girl, period. They then turn to Sakurai for input. Since he's in Uzaki's age bracket, Sakurai drops a whole TED talk on how maturity isn't just about age, shocking everyone with the fact that he has brains beyond just lifting weights. Fujio then spills everything Ozaki claims she does for her supposed senpai, basically listing a full wife resume. Kuroki immediately suspects Cap when Fujio says his daughter claims to have never been put in 17 positions, but Fujio stands by his daddy instincts, which apparently have never failed him. Imura tells him to relax since Uzaki's supposed boyfriend seems committed to keeping things pure. That triggers Fujio's memory of how Uzaki described Sakurai, and now he's fuming, thinking the dude is ignoring her feelings. They throw the question back at Sakurai, who confirms that if he genuinely likes a girl, he's definitely keeping his magnum in his pants out of respect. That answer soothes Fujio's soul enough for them to finally finish their workout. Meanwhile, Ozaki is at home, waiting on a text from Sakurai about their next cooking lesson. Yanajit tries to distract her with a game, but Ozaki refuses. She then asks Kiri, who immediately nopes out because he's not about to get humiliated by his sister again. Ozaki starts suspecting Sakurai has found a new obsession until he finally replies, and she smiles for the first time that day. Yanajit notices and of course starts poking at her, but Ozaki denies everything. She then announces to Tsuki that Sakurai is coming over, which makes Yanajit grill her even harder. She even jokingly asks Tsuki if she can skip school to see him, but Tsuki shuts that down immediately. The next day, Ozaki helps Sakurai with cooking, before taking off her apron to hit him with a surprise. Meanwhile, Tsuki, chilling at the cafe, convinces herself that she did Ozaki a solid by staying out of the house so Sakurai can focus on her. However, she feels bad that she can't return Sakurai's feelings. Ami and Akihiko see right through her, but decide to let her live in her delusion. Back at the house, Sakurai finally gets to play with Uzaki's kitties, and he is completely obsessed. Later, Tsuki bumps into him on his way home and listens as he talks about cooking, until he mentions staying longer for some extra fun. That immediately puts Tsuki on high alert. She asks if he finally did the deed, and he, completely oblivious, thinks she's talking about playing with the cats. He proudly announces that Uzaki let him touch those kitties as much as he wanted. Tsuki, horrified, assumes he means he had clapped her kitties red. Then when he casually mentions looking forward to handling both of their kitties at once, causing her to almost lose her mind, thinking that he still wants her so badly. A few days later, Mizaki and her siblings throw Tsuki a birthday celebration, complete with cake and gifts. The next day, Fujio and Tsuki are being lovey-dovey, while their young ones watch in disappointment since they are starving. So Tsuki apologizes for waking up late, all thanks to Fujio, who ate her cakes all night. Ozaki, suddenly hit with the realization that she doesn't even know Sakurai's birthday, rushes to the cafe to interrogate Sakaki. He's instantly disappointed, questioning how she doesn't know something so basic. She blames it on being busy, but they suspect she just wants another excuse to keep Sakurai obsessed with her. She insists it's just payback for him celebrating her birthday, so Sakaki finally tells her the date. Now that she has the info, she's clueless on what to do with it. Ami suggests a cosplay surprise, handing over an outfit she had stashed away, and Akihiko debates cutting ties with stupid self entirely. Sakaki, however, advises Uzaki to actually think about what would make Sakurai happy instead. On the big day, Uzaki starts things off with a meal, then takes Sakurai out for a gaming marathon. After binge watching his favorite movies, they wrap up with cake. As she heads home, she asks if he had fun, and he admits it was a great day. He thanks her for spending it with him, and she immediately tasks him with planning her next birthday. As he reflects on all their memories, he realizes how huge a part of his life she's become. She suggests they start a yearly competition to see who throws the best birthday, but he reminds her that he won't be around after next year. That statement hits her like a truck. Suddenly, Sakaki's words about speeding up their love story make sense. The thought of losing him sends her into a panic, so she immediately asks if he can wait a year more before graduating, shocking Sakurai, and he calls her selfishness final boss. Uzaki later gets home and just can't stop thinking about her conversation with Sakurai. She's so deep in thought that Yanagi, being the nosy little gremlin she is, gets curious and asks what's up, but Uzaki shuts her down instantly, telling her underdeveloped brain to stay out of her very complex and definitely real college love life. Yanagi immediately reminds her that she doesn't even have a love life to begin with. That one hits deep, and Uzaki spirals into another one of her defensive rants, only making Yanagi more convinced that something fishy is going on. The next day, Uzaki is full-on stalking Sakurai, watching him chat with some girls from his class like a wildlife documentarian studying her prey. That is until Sakaki catches her red-handed. He casually lets her know that those girls are eyeing Sakurai for a Cloud9 experience, and that's why he's been telling Uzaki to step up her game. Uzaki gets jealous but quickly plays it cool, acting like she doesn't care and even saying she likes that Sakurai has more friends. Sakaki, never one to waste an opportunity, asks if she'd be okay with him helping the girls hit since she's apparently unbothered. That instantly wipes the smug look off her face, but she still insists that Sakurai is in love with her, so he would turn down those girls anyway, pissing Sakaki off, who is now tired of hearing that BS. She then tells him she's just doing community service by keeping Sakurai from sinking into an abyss of loneliness and despair. Sakaki is officially exhausted. He's been connecting the dots for Uzaki this whole time, but it's like trying to explain quantum physics to a goldfish. Then she starts talking about how Sakurai only has a year left until graduation, and for a moment, Sakaki has hope. Maybe, just maybe, she finally gets it. But no, instead she announces that she's going to take the entire year to find a way to make him confess first, making Sakaki lose his mind. He tells her that waiting might be too late, but her delusions have an iron grip on her reasoning, so he just gives up and wishes her luck. Meanwhile, Sakurai, completely oblivious to all this chaos, is in class scrolling for thank you gift ideas for Uzaki since she made his birthday fun. At lunch, Uzaki keeps staring at him like she's trying to read his mind, looking for a way to force a confession out of him. Then, inspiration strikes when she sees his lunch and decides that making him a bento box is the ultimate love trap. Later at the cafe, she reveals her genius plan, and Sakaki immediately short-circuits, asking if she thinks they are in Crayon Academy. But Ami thinks it's actually a solid idea, since normal romantic moves never seem to work on Sakurai. Uzaki gets excited again because she's already used to making food for him, but that excitement dies a painful death when she gets home and realizes that making a bento is way harder than just cooking. Her entire family, as expected, does nothing but make things worse. Yanagi teases her endlessly while Kiri, the glutton, lurks around waiting for leftovers. Fujio is just out here, still trying to get his daily pump in. She struggles to pick ingredients until Chuki, in her usual mom's wisdom, tells her to stop acting like she's competing in a gourmet championship. Yanagi suggests decorating it, and Fujio, being Fujio, asks if she can throw in some protein powder for the gains. Uzaki gets fed up and promises to make them all some food just to shut them up. The next day, she calls Sakurai out and hands him the bento, which apparently triggers some deep, hidden emotions in him. He stares at it like it just unlocked a childhood memory, feeling things he doesn't understand. As she turns to leave, she casually says he doesn't have to eat with her. That throws him off, and he awkwardly insists that he doesn't mind eating together. But instead of the dining hall, they end up sitting somewhere private. When he opens the boxes and realizes she made the exact same meal for herself, he finally understands why she didn't want to eat in front of anyone, and he gets even more flustered. Sakaki, who has been lurking like a concerned older brother, watches all of this unfold and is absolutely floored by how an emotionless creep like Sakurai just got emotionally wrecked by a bento box, so he decides to leave them alone to their weird little romance. Meanwhile, over at the gym, Fujio is going on and on about what an amazing cook Uzaki is until Imura straight up threatens to fire him since the idiot keeps mixing family with business. Back at the cafe, Uzaki won't shut up about how her bento plan was a massive success, and Sakaki, Ami, and Akihiko all sit there in silence, letting her enjoy her delusions in peace. That night, she's gaming with Yanagi, but of course, Yanagi has one goal, which is to interrogate her about Sakurai. She tells her she would like to see Sakurai, but Izaki nopes out of there immediately. However, Yanagi is relentless, so she marches straight to Suki to dig for more information. The next morning, Izaki is surprised to see Yanagi all dressed up and hears that she has big plans for the day before heading off to work. Izaki barely starts her shift when Yanagi shows up at the cafe, nearly giving her a high BP. She tries to throw her out, but Sakurai doesn't see what the big deal is and tells her to stop being childish. She sulks and gets to work. But then, Sakurai asks why she didn't react the same way when Suki first visited. Izaki explains that Yanagi is a lot to handle, but for some reason that makes him smile. Now she's suspicious. He clarifies that he finally understands why she's so good at taking care of him. It's because she's always been the responsible older sister. Just then, Akihiko finishes making Yanagi's tea, so Izaki goes to serve her, determined to keep her from talking to Sakurai. But of course, Sakurai follows her, and before she knows it, Yanagi and Sakurai have a full-blown conversation about games, as if they've been besties for years. Izaki is losing it, and is barely holding it together when Yanagi takes things to the next level as she casually gives Sakurai permission to call her by her first name, shocking her who had suspected that something like this would happen. Izaki kicks off another round of bickering, grilling Sakurai for how easily he agreed to call Yanagi by her first name. Meanwhile, Yanagi is getting the full lowdown from Akihito on the absolute circus that is her sister's relationship with Sakurai. Just as things heat up, Andy makes her grand entrance, casually introducing herself to Yanagi. Her dad, caught completely off guard, realizes Amy has likely been lurking in the shadows, spying on Izaki and Sakurai's love life like an undercover agent. But instead of addressing that obvious red flag, he shrugs it off while Izaki keeps hammering Sakurai with accusations. Determined to make her point, Izaki declares that Sakurai's punishment is to call her by her first name for the rest of the day. He flat out refuses, saying it would be embarrassing because people might think they're a thing. Izaki immediately flares up again, forcing Sakurai into damage control mode. He stumbles through an apology, trying to reassure her that it's not like they're not close. As Izaki fumes, Yanagi just sips her tea, finally understanding why Izaki never let her family meet this guy before. Sakurai, in a rare moment of self-awareness, admits that, yeah, maybe he has been treating Izaki differently from everyone else. Hope sparks in her eyes as she asks if he's finally ready to call her by her first name. However, Sakurai, being a pain in her tooth, immediately crushes that hope by saying it's still too soon, causing Izaki to go full nuclear while the others watch in silent horror. She rages about how he had zero hesitation with Yanagi, but still struggles with her, then gradually shifts to actual sadness, asking if he doesn't even see her as a close friend. He tells her that's not it and stumbles on saying it is because she is special to him, making her speechless instantly. Sakurai becomes embarrassed and wonders why the heck he said that, but Izaki immediately regains her aura, and that's understandable. Later at home, Yanagi spills the tea to Tsuki, explaining how effortlessly she clicked with Sakurai, and throwing in Izaki's obvious crush for good measure. Tsuki, however, latches onto the wrong detail entirely. Her overactive imagination convinces her that Sakurai is some kind of smooth operator looking to build a Izaki family harem. Determined to protect her daughters, she sets an ultimatum that if Yanagi ever wants to meet Sakurai again, she's tagging along. Yanagi, assuming her mom just wants some cafe snacks, agrees without hesitation. Meanwhile, Fujio arrives home and is immediately suspicious about Yanagi's unusual Sunday outing, but she shuts him down with a brutal mind your business, leaving him emotionally shattered and questioning his entire parenting approach. Over in another corner of the house, Kiri finally emerges from an intense study session, only to be bombarded with apologies for disturbing him. But his frustration isn't about noise, it's about missing time for physical activity. Dude just wants to touch grass. Suki, Evan, the strict parent, insists he focuses on his finals before even thinking about working out. Kiri isn't just upset about missing a workout, but is rather mourning the winter training arc he lost, knowing he won't get another shot at bulking up his twig-like frame. Desperate, Kiri pulls Fujio aside and begs him to keep this crisis under wraps. Fujio, delighted that at least one of his kids still values his bodybuilding obsession, happily agrees. The next day, Kiri heads to the gym, determined to prove himself. He scopes out the heavier dumbbells people are using, determined to outlift the elderly patrons who couldn't care less about his fragile ego. After struggling to make an impression in the weight section, he moves on to the bench press, but a ripped, bald dude steals his thunder. With no other choice, he switches to the treadmill, only to get obliterated by a turbocharged grandma, who forces him to push himself past his limits. His legs soon give out, and he crashes. Meanwhile, Sakurai arrives at the gym and asks Fujio for directions to the pool. Fujio explains the swimming rules before getting completely sidetracked, convinced that Sakurai's training regimen is part of some elaborate scheme to impress a girl, unaware that the girl in question is his own daughter. Moments later, Kiri shows up at the pool, ready to dominate this section. Spotting Sakurai, he assumes the guy is a newbie just dipping his toes in. That delusion is immediately shattered when Sakurai starts swimming like an Olympic champion, leaving Kiri floundering like a fish out of water. The senior citizens watch in disbelief as Kiri throws everything he has into the race, only to get humiliated twice in a single lap. Later in the sauna, Kiri attempts to salvage his pride by convincing himself that he only lost because he wasn't in peak condition. But just as he starts regaining some dignity, Sakurai walks in fresh out of the shower, completely oblivious to the towel concept. Kiri takes one look and immediately spirals into existential despair because seeing a dude's gronk was not in his bingo card. That night, he sulks at home, feeling like he was run over by a herd of cows. The girls, worried about his sudden mood shift, try to figure out what's wrong. Just then, Fujio arrives and waits for Tsuki to leave before leaning in with a knowing smile, asking if he is ready to become a gym rat. But this sounds like Greek to Kiri, as dude is too traumatized at how magnificent that magnum was. A week later, they finally wrap up dinner, and Fujio takes the chance to announce his master plan. He's taking Sunday off to chill with the gang since Kiri and Yanagi are done with exams. He whips out his phone and flashes some hot spring pics he heard about from his gym bros. Tsuki gives the idea a stamp of approval, so he asks Kiri if he's down. Kiri considers it a prime chance to flex his swimming skills again, but then Sakurai's glizzy trauma suddenly kicks in like a Vietnam flashback, and he mentally nopes out of it. Fast forward to the next day, and they're all packed in the car, zooming toward the hot springs. Fujio, however, is not vibing with the fact that Kiri stayed back, worried about what that little gremlin is up to. Meanwhile, Bro is back at home stroking the cats, seeking succor, but even their fluff can't erase the horrors in his mind. In the car, Yanagi shifts into full menace mode, poking at Uzaki and asking if she'd rather be on this trip with Sakurai. Uzaki tells her to shut it, but Yanagi keeps stirring the pot. The mere mention of Uzaki being in love flicks a switch in Fujio's brain. He goes full Need for Speed, sending Suki into survival mode as she clings onto her seat for dear life. Turns out he's still salty that Uzaki has been ghosting him for weeks, while Suki and Yanagi refuse to spill the tea on this so-called special senpai. Fujio slams the gas, making the poor driver in front of them realize he's now an unfortunate NPC in a random road rage encounter. Despite the near vehicular manslaughter, they eventually make it to the springs, where the girls immediately change into plot-revealing swimsuits and sink into the warm water. Suki gives Fujio a nod of approval as his genius plan is actually working. The squad hops between different bath types, eventually landing in the fish pedicure bath. Uzaki and Yanagi put up a brave front but quickly crack under the ticklish torture, laughing like maniacs. Fujio, now officially embarrassed, tells them to shut up, but then Suki starts laughing too, and her physics-defying assets make things even worse. The girls eventually decide to explore the area, and Fujio tries to follow, but instantly wipes out, getting his pecs slapped into oblivion by the water. Meanwhile, Uzaki and Yanagi run into a couple of baby-faced otakus looking to test their rise. The girls clown them, saying that if Sakurai were here, his resting menace face alone would send them running. The boys suggest grabbing drinks, so Yanagi, in Pete troll mode, claims their parents still monitor their phones and the guys immediately fold like wet paper. Just as they're scrambling to apologize for their failed flirting attempt, Fujio materializes behind them like a horror villain and sends them packing. He immediately regrets bringing his daughters to a place where every walking anime stereotype sees them as their next waifu. Sensing his stress levels peaking, the girls promise to stick by his side to keep him from spiraling. Fujio calms down until he spots Suki getting hit on too. Instant overprotective mode reactivated. Before he can even catch his breath, another group of guys approaches, and he storms over, ready to throw hands. Except these dudes aren't flirting, they're gym bros. In awe of his Greek god physique, they beg for selfies and lifting tips. Fujio, basking in the attention, strikes more poses than a bodyweight champion in Mr. Olympia, and unintentionally recruits them into the Church of Iron. Uzaki eventually gets tired of being a human teabag and wanders off, only to get bodied by the freezing weather. She stumbles upon a cave bath and ducks inside, only to come face to face with Sakurai and Sakaki. She starts to interrogate them, convinced that Sakaki set this up, but for once, the man is innocent. Sakurai and Uzaki start catching up until they notice Sakaki watching them with a weird third-wheel grin. Turns out the man's just lonely. Ever since Uzaki came into the picture, Sakurai has barely had time for the boys, and Sakaki is one more ignored text away from becoming the Joker. Sakurai tries to strangle him into silence, but the damage is done. Feeling guilty, Azaki offers to hang out with them for the rest of the day, but Sakurai tells her to focus on her family since she barely gives them any attention. The realization hits her like a truck that she's been snubbing Fujio hard. She decides to prioritize him for the day, but not before making Sakurai compliment her swimsuit. Bros before hose is temporarily restored, and the boys realize the occasional bro hangout is essential for mental stability. Azaki, meanwhile, reunites with Tsuki and Yanaja, who immediately tell Fujio to stop recruiting gym addicts and start looking for food instead. Back at home that night, Kiri is still on his gremlin arc, begging for food like a starving alley cat. They toss him some snacks from the trip while rubbing the fun he missed in his face. The FOMO hits hard, and he realizes he has fumbled an elite bonding session. He demands Fujio clear his schedule so they can all go again next week. Suspicious of his sudden change of heart, they press him for answers. Kiri, in peak delusion, declares that since even the girls got hit on, the hot springs must be crawling with low-standard baddies. His genius plan is to pull up and become their Prince Charming. However, the girls get horrified at the tragic lack of self-respect and slap the nonsense out of him while Tsuki watches the chaos unfold, proud of her beautifully dysfunctional family. Following this, the holiday season is in full swing at college, and Azaki is vibing with Etho, casually prying into her love life. Etho spills the tea about a date night her boyfriend has planned, then flips the script and asks Azaki about her plans with Sakurai. Azaki immediately goes radio silent, refusing to admit her tragic, lonely reality. Later that evening, she's at his place prepping dinner, and she catches him staring hard. Her imagination kicks into overdrive, convinced he's scheming a grand Christmas plan for the two of them. Delusions fully activated, she spirals into a mental anime battle against her own feelings and ultimately accepts the undeniable truth that she might be falling for this dude already. Mid-crisis, Sakurai calls her name, making her jump out of her skin. He suddenly tells her to take off her jacket, making her think bro wants to get down quicker than she thought. She becomes shy as she pulls her top, ready to take as many backshots as he can give. But she snaps out of her frisky mode when he suddenly pulls up the back of her shirt and says he knew it was his shirt, demanding to know why she stole it from his wardrobe. This was why the moron was staring at her initially. She retaliates with the full force of her baby fists, swearing to return the shirt. But in her frustration, she accidentally blurts out her deep, dark addiction of sniffing up his scent. Sakurai labels it weird, causing her to spiral into embarrassment. He tries to brush it off and promises to forget, but Azaki won't let this humiliation off. The next evening, she suggests a horror movie night, which she expects to make Sakurai cower in fear. Bro begs for mercy since he doesn't like horrors, but she doesn't agree because she is bent on getting revenge. However, plot twist, the first scene plays, and she instantly regrets everything as she starts to get scared too. She nearly jumps out of her skin, prompting Sakurai to question why she set this up in the first place, and she confesses she's never actually watched a horror movie before. She refuses to back down anyway, but as the film progresses, she becomes very scared that she shamelessly clings to him for dear life. At one point, she straight up buries her head in his clothes, and by the time the movie ends, she has developed PTSD. However, Sakurai, trying to be a gentleman, offers to walk her home, but she fears that there might be ghosts lurking everywhere, so she begs to stay the night, promising to make him breakfast and lunch in return. He caves and helps her set up a futon before she heads for a bath. Meanwhile, he spots what he assumes is a food package, only to realize it's her e-cups. He panics and apologizes the second she steps out, but she shrugs it off, admitting she was the one who left it out. She then shows him his clothes she changed into because of how cute they are, only for Sakurai to drop the bomb that those aren't his underwear, embarrassing her. So she rushes off to wash them immediately. Sakurai soon receives a call from his dad, who somehow already knows he has a girl over. So his dad hypes him up and tells him to ensure he uses a plot shield, embarrassing him. Elsewhere, Ami and Sakaki wait for Uzaki and Sakurai to arrive for drinks, but only Uzaki shows up, announcing that Sakurai has gone back home for the first time in 2 years. They head to a bar, where Sakaki drops the info that Sakurai has been avoiding home for so long, which is definitely a thing. She informs them about how she noticed his mood changed right after his dad's call, and gets bothered about how she doesn't know much about him. Meanwhile, Sakurai reaches home and is immediately greeted by his mom, Haruko, who wastes no time roasting his behavior of staying away from home. He barely has time to apologize before he notices the tiny, ugly human in her hands. His mother introduces the little human as Nabilka, his little sister, surprising him because he never even knew she existed. Haruko is shocked at this, throwing his dad under the bus for never telling him. Right on cue, Shiro, Sakurai's dad, emerges with a casual welcome home, Inside, they finally get into it, and Shiro nonchalantly reveals that he made Sakurai live on his own so he and his mother can have enough privacy and space for all styles of plot development, and this led to the birth of Madoka. He also conveniently forgot to mention her existence, claiming he wanted his son to focus on his college life. Sakurai argues with Shiro over his questionable brain cells before announcing he's heading back to his place that night. His parents try to guilt-trip him into staying, and when that doesn't work, Haruko strategically hands him Madoka, while Shiro prepares a bath to make him stay for the night. Back at the bar, Azaki is steadily losing herself to alcohol, almost beating herself up over how little she actually knows about Sakurai. Sakaki, thoroughly entertained, watches as she drunkenly vents about her feelings, while Ami, sensing the potential for some fun, starts fishing for details about their old school days together. Some time ago, he watched her attempt to glide through the water and tried to give her some tips to smooth things out, but her anti-brain processing skills kicked in, and comprehension took an early retirement. They decided to take a break, during which she used the time to hype up his god-tier swimming skills, only to immediately roast him as a terrible teacher to cover up her own tragic lack of ability. He just rolled with it, admitting that he wasn't exactly a master instructor since everyone else had at least basic swimming knowledge and didn't need to be coached like a newborn deer learning to walk. A few minutes into discussing his swimming experience and the mentors who trained him, she apologized for initially thinking he was a lurking menace and blamed it all on his eyes. That hit a nerve, sending his insecurities into overdrive. She quickly backtracked, apologized again for being insensitive, and dove back into practice. Meanwhile, Sakaki and Ami listen with full enthusiasm as she dishes out Sakurai's entire sports history. It turns out he's absolute garbage at anything that requires equipment, but he turns into a beast when it's just raw muscle power. Ami, of course, started drooling over the thought, and Sakaki just prayed her unhinged thirst wouldn't send Uzaki running for the hills or make her stop hyping up Sakurai. At that very moment, Sakurai is playing with little Madoka. Shiro walks in at that moment and starts clicking away, taking their pictures before summoning Sakurai to the dojo. A few moments later, both of them are suited up in robes, getting ready to test each other's strength, while Haruko keeps Madoka occupied, hoping the guys will wrap up before dinner. What starts as light sparring quickly turns into a full-on showdown. Sakurai finds an opening to strike, but Shiro dodges and takes a step back to reassess. Sakurai sees his chance and lunges, only to get absolutely folded in the blink of an eye. Shiro reveals that the entire setup had been a bait to lower Sakurai's guard, but he did give him props for getting stronger since their last duel. Sakurai, however, is more concerned about the fact that Shiro has added a skirt to his robe, and Shiro casually explains that he is just trying to stay trendy like a Gen Z. Then, without skipping a beat, he tells Sakurai to get back on his feet for another round, this time to discuss his relationship with Uzaki. Sakurai, still clinging to the delusion that they weren't a thing, tries to argue, but Shiro hits him with the real question, asking why the heck was Uzaki so comfortable bathing at his place and spending the night. Sakurai launches into a whole monologue about how Uzaki is different from any other girl, but Shiro gets bored halfway through and slams him into the ground again. Realizing Sakurai needed the talk, Shiro plans to educate him while throwing him around the dojo for a few more rounds. That plan, however, gets cut short when Haruko storms in and slams both of them to the ground before demanding they get ready for dinner, leaving Shiro feeling like the wife of the home. Meanwhile, Azeki finally makes it home, courtesy of Ami, who has sobered up just enough to function. Suki thanks Ami and takes Azaki inside while Yanaja tries to pry some details about their night out. Unfortunately, all Ami can remember is the cultured thoughts running through her head as Uzaki blabbered on about Sakurai earlier. Back at Sakurai's place, he hops into the shower, still trying to decipher whatever cryptic relationship wisdom Shiro had tried to impart. But just as he starts deep thinking, Shiro crashes his piece by suggesting they share the bath like the good old times. But Sakurai is no more a boy. The next day, Imura and Fujio show up at the cafe, catching Sakaki off guard when they reveal that Imura and Akihiko used to be classmates. Fujio immediately asks why Sakaki isn't already pumping iron and suggests signing up so they can all train together with Sakurai. Akihiko likes the idea and asks if there was a trial period, but Imura is too busy wondering why Sakurai has been scrubbing the same spot on the counter for over 30 minutes. Earlier, he had said goodbye to his mom, promising to visit more often to finally get the upper hand on Shiro. But Shiro's words from their dojo match are still replaying in his head on a loop, making it impossible to focus. Fujio, sensing the usual girl troubles, asks if Sakurai needs some life advice again. That immediately set off Sakaki and Akihiko, who feel deeply betrayed that Sakurai had never sought their wisdom. After Sakurai reassures them that Fujio is just freakishly good at reading situations, Fujio fires up his detective skills and starts forming multiple relationship theories that they don't teach in schools. Akihiko gives some philosophical advice, telling Sakurai to take his time, because this decision could alter the course of his life. He also reassures him that no matter how long it takes, his friends won't judge him for taking his sweet time figuring things out. Fast forward to the next week, Sakurai decides it is time to properly thank Uzaki for everything she has done for him over the years. Just as he is about to deliver his heartfelt speech, she pulls up in an unreasonably good mood and immediately ruins the moment by clowning him for not having friends to spend Christmas with. She then casually mentions that she had been invited to a party, but is willing to skip it to hang out with him instead. This pisses him off, and he snaps at her to stop showing up just to roast him. But she keeps following him, pleading for mercy, while Sakaki watches from a distance, wondering how long it would take these two idiots to admit they were obviously in love. Later that evening, Uzaki is outside Sakurai's place, desperately begging to be let in, but he ignores her, determined to teach her a lesson. The next day at the cafe, Sakaki and Amy are on to Uzaki's case, dragging her for somehow ruining all the progress she made with Sakurai. Uzaki, tired of their verbal beatdown, shrugs it off and claims she doesn't care about Sakurai being mad because she's got other people to spend Christmas with anyway. Sakaki, not buying the act, drops a bomb. He and Sakurai got invited to a drinking party with some girls, and since Uzaki clearly can't handle business, he figures it's finally time to let his boy get scooped up by a random baddie who would make him a real man. Akiko steps in though, telling them to at least give Uzaki one last shot at fixing things before pulling the plug on Operation Cupid. That night, Yanagi hears the news and immediately warns Uzaki. Either she patches things up with Sakurai, or she risks spending Christmas like Kiri, the lonely doofus. When Kiri asks what that's supposed to mean, he proudly announces he's got plans with some top-tier athletes from school. However, Yanagi tells him he is only capping and reminds him that his only squad consists of socially awkward creeps. Uzaki, irritated by her meddling, tells Yanagi to stay out of her business and storms off to her room. But Yanagi is already cooking up a scheme to set things right. The next day, she rolls up to the cafe and Amy, sensing mischief, immediately asks what's up. Noticing that Uzaki and Sakurai are still in a cold war, Yanagi makes her move. She approaches Sakurai and casually asks if he'd rather spend Christmas gaming with her since Uzaki is banned from his place. Before he can even think about it, Uzaki gets jealous and jumps in to suggest he spend it at her place instead, dodging the whole ban issue while still hanging out with her. Yanagi tries to warn her it's a terrible idea, but Uzaki ignores her and keeps pushing until Sakurai agrees. Then, just as the deal is sealed, Yanagi reminds her about Fujio's deep-seated hatred for any guy in Uzaki's life. Realizing her mistake, Uzaki panics, but it's too late to back out now, and she promises to figure something out. When the big night arrives, Uzaki brings Sakurai home, and at first, Fujio greets him warmly until he actually sees his face. Instantly, his dark aura activates, and he starts battling his inner demons to keep his rage in check as he realizes that he actually knows him. Meanwhile, Kiri is out with his fellow beta males at a karaoke bar, attempting to sing his pain away, but loneliness keeps hitting the high notes instead, and he concludes that he needs a girlfriend. Back at the Uzaki household, Sakurai is seated at the dinner table, trying to make conversation with Fujio, but every time he opens his mouth, he gets hit with a death glare. Realizing this, Tsuki steps in and tells Fujio to chill, diffusing the situation temporarily. Just as Fujio starts regaining his sanity, he remembers that he straight up spilled Uzaki's feelings to Sakurai at the gym, causing an instant panic. He yanks Sakurai aside, swallowing his rage for a moment, and asks if he remembers their conversation. When Sakurai's brain loads the memory, he immediately tries to dip, but Fujio blocks his exit, begging him to keep quiet so Uzaki can enjoy her Christmas. Sakurai agrees, but as soon as he gets back to the table, Uzaki's face starts scrambling his thoughts, so he drowns them out by gulping a glass of piss. Fujio's barely holding it together as Uzaki starts getting flirty at the dinner table, but he keeps himself in check for her sake. After dinner, he watches proudly as Uzaki enjoys herself with Sakurai and assumes his plan worked. But then, Sakurai suddenly calls a timeout, saying he can't keep pretending. Desperate, Fujio asks if knocking him out will erase the memories, but Sakurai suggests a different kind of amnesia, obliterating his liver. Fujio takes that as a challenge and brings out the heavy artillery, encouraging Sakurai to drink himself into oblivion. About an hour later, Sakurai can barely keep his head up. Fujio, thinking the mission is finally accomplished, suggests calling it a night, but Uzaki is not done yet. She starts messing with Sakurai's face, and in his intoxicated state, he starts answering every question without a filter. Seizing the opportunity, they get Tsuki to take him for a spin. She only wants to thank him for looking out for Uzaki, but that somehow sets off a whole speech about how Uzaki has actually been taking care of him this whole time. Then, in a moment of drunk honesty, he spills his tragic backstory output, how his dad's complete lack of shame and excessive display of affection with his mom made him socially awkward and isolated. He then shifts gears, explaining how Shiro actually told him to take Uzaki seriously because making the wrong move in their relationship could hurt her. That revelation slams into Fujio like a freight train, making him realize that Sakurai actually loves Uzaki. A while later, Fujio steps out of a nearby store, still chewing on what Sakurai said earlier. He figures the guy's had it rough with his dad being a violent loser, so he decides to cut him some slack. But the moment he walks through his front door, he sees something shocking. Wazaki is in the middle of trying to strip Sakurai. Yanagit is snapping pics like she's running a side hustle, but Suki is just chilling, making zero effort to stop this madness. Turns out, while Fujio was out, Wazaki obliterated Sakurai in a card game and was ready for round 2. So Yanagit suggested making the game more interesting by adding punishments for the loser. Wazaki, slightly tipsy and always up for some mischief, agreed. Sakurai lost again and boom. She started undressing him while Yanagit documented the crime scene for Ami. Suki, utterly horrified at the moral decay of her household, decided to step in. However, she didn't plan to stop them, but rather to make sure Sakurai's clothes stayed clean. Just when Azaki was about to yank off his shirt, Fujio busted in and shut down the operation. He gets Sakurai dressed again, apologizing for abandoning him to the whims of his depraved daughters. He offers to call him a cab, but Azaki insists they should take him home since he's too wasted to function. On the drive, Azaki pokes at Fujio to see if he's still mad at her, but he lets it go, even telling Sakurai he's welcome to come over again. At Sakurai's apartment, Azaki helps him inside and sets up his food, teasing him for needing a babysitter at his grown age. Feeling guilty, he apologizes for the trouble and vows to do better. That apology hits different, and the next thing she knows, she's hugging him, telling him he can keep being a mess around her forever. Then, suddenly she's under him on the bed as bro prepare to slide it in. Outside, Fujio is wondering why she's taking so long. Inside, Sakurai, eyes locked on hers, leans in as Ozaki prepares for the worst by closing her eyes, but he faceplants beside her, completely knocked out. Ozaki sighs, tucks him in, and heads out. On the way home, she replays that almost moment in her head, getting all flustered. Fujio, suspicious, asks what took so long, but she dodges the question and instead interrogates him about why Sakurai was so drunk, almost causing Fujio to have a mini heart attack over his failed liver destruction plot. The next day at the cafe, Ami is grinning like she just won the lottery. Ozaki, already sensing trouble, asks what's up, only to see the scandalous pictures Yanagit sent her. Ozaki tries to explain, but Ami does not care. She just thanks her for stripping Sakurai and hands over the agreed-upon payment. Ozeki questions whether Ami should really be spending money on stuff like this, but Ami takes that as her asking for a raise and triples the payment, encouraging her and Yanagit to keep the supply chain going. Sakurai walks in at that moment, and Ozaki, feeling guilty, tries to apologize, but Ami and Akihiko strategically retreat to give them privacy. Sakurai, however, has no idea what happened, and Ozaki, in full damage control mode, shows him the photos to jog his memory. He stares at them, horrified, but nope, he still doesn't remember nothing, so they just decide to move on with their day. Later that night, they walk home together, discussing New Year's plans. At an intersection, once Uzaki is out of sight, Sakurai runs faster than Usain Bolt to his apartment. He's been thinking about that almost kiss all day and needs some space. He spends the rest of the year watching her in her natural habitat, trying to make sense of his feelings. Following that, New Year's Eve arrives and Uzaki heads home to change for their shrine visit, while Sakurai, as tradition demands, goes to let Shiro break his spine again. Shiro, always one to stir the pot, notices he's off his game and starts teasing him about Uzaki, earning himself a solid kick to the face. They proceed to throw hands until Haruko steps in, reminding Sakurai about his shrine plans. At the shrine, Sakurai meets up with Akihiko and Sakaki, greeting them before dropping a bomb that he knows Uzaki has feelings for him. He expects shock, but Sakaki just stares at him like he's the densest man in anime history and tells him this is obvious to literally everyone. Sakaki asks him what he plans to do about it, but Sakurai says he will just pass since she hasn't confessed herself, annoying Sakaki, who immediately blows up, calling this the dumbest plan imaginable. Before the lecture can continue, Ami and Uzaki call, cutting the conversation short. The guys promise to support whatever decision Sakurai makes and head out to meet them. After the shrine visit, Sakaki, Ami, and Akihiko retreat to the car to warm up, leaving Uzaki and Sakurai alone. As the first sunrise of the new year lights up the sky, Sakurai shyly grabs her hand, planning to tell her how he feels, but then he fumbles. Instead of confessing, the bozo blurts out that he's looking forward to another great year as besties. Uzaki, who was initially embarrassed, expresses her excitement and smiles as she keeps watching the sunrise, completely missing the fact that Sakurai is dying inside. The end. If you enjoyed this recap, clap the like button and insult the main character anyhow you want in the comment section below. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're yet to for more plot-filled adventures. If you like anime recaps like this, watch this video right here.